I think I might go for Vivaldi Scale
streaming
this time. What's a stream?
It's like a river.
Oh, okay.
It kind of flows.
You can be a Zora.
It's actually smaller than a river.
But it's like a river.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a river, but it's like a river.
Exactly.
So. We have nobody watching.
Today, guys.
Good. You won't see I don't think my brother was working today, but my brother works there. I think I told you already, right?
Yeah, you sent me his cat latte art.
Yeah.
Alright.
His cat art.
I swear, that's like his dream job.
Am I super loud?
I don't know.
Oh, now we have people watching. They're finally tuning in.
Alright.
His cat art.
I swear, that's like his...
that you're streaming Fortnite with subs right now.
On Twitch?
On YouTube? No.
On Twitch.
Oh, on Twitch.
Doesn't matter.
I never look at the Twitch stream. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, Twitch people.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I guess I should.
Maybe I should.
Twitch up so I can see the comments when we get to the questions.
Ultimately, Twitch is actually a better platform, but I always pay more attention to YouTube. I mean, what? What? We're gonna get demonetized now that I've said that.
Alright.
Good job.
YouTube will get mad at us.
We have about 10 people watching this, so everybody. What's going on here? It looks like it's... Does the stream look laggy to any of you guys?
I don't have it open right now.
Yes. Totally does.
Huh.
Very laggy. And it sounds like a robot as well. It's very choppy with the audio. It sounds very like tin canny, you know what I mean? Heavy Bear in the chat and says Kayla and it sounds like a robot as well. It's
That's
very
just how I sound. Come on.
That's so
because I am a robot.
You've played enough Fortnite with me to know that I'm basically a robot that sucks at that game.
Yeah, I'm real bad at that game too. I honestly just can't.
I kid you not, like whenever I play that game, I play it with Cameron or I play it with Jacob, and they always carry me because I am so pathetic.
Can't.
So I kid you not, like whenever I play that game or I play it with Jacob.
Alright, I'm gonna stop the stream and then.
Apparently, I don't know my password for my Gmail.
Oh, that's kind of an important one.
I know, I was trying to log in to
Daniel
open the
sound like
stream, and I was
Terminators.
just like...
Maybe we are Terminators.
I got my like, whenever I play that game code, or I play it with Jacob, and they always carry me because I am so...
Only us.
Alright, so you guys talk. Say something, Daniel.
Something, Daniel.
Something, Daniel. Pathetic. A Daniel that is a something.
Stealth, say something, Daniel.
3.
Maybe we are Terminators.
I got my passion code 9. Or I play it with Jacob, and
they
always carry me.
No, I'm in the middle of writing work email.
Oh, okay.
It's working now? It sounds normal now?
Ow!
It sounds good to me.
Let me just take a listen.
Remind me later.
Yes, Heavy Bear says something Daniel a lot better.
Okay.
Maybe we are Terminators.
Possibly. Alright. Are you guys ready? Alright. Stealth, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Alright. Kayla, you ready?
No! Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's rumble. Sorry.
Gross.
What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or Game Over Jesse, as all of you may know me, here with us on episode 45 of the Hylian Gamescast for July 29th, I believe. It's Kayla, Daniel, alright, and joining...
Just following suit.
For... actually returning to the channel, but the first time on the actual podcast, Stealth. So for everyone who may not know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself and let them know where they might know you from.
Well, they would definitely know me from Twitter and the other podcasts that I do. Big JRPG guy. Yeah, that's basically it.
All right, and where could people find you on Twitter if they're not already following you?
Find me at stealth and 3 underscores. I wanted the non-underscored version, but apparently that belongs to a bot, so there's no getting that one.
Nice. All right, well, on today's Hylian Gamescast, we're going to be talking about Inti Creates wanting to remake Zelda 2, which likely won't happen, but it's a great discussion. Nintendo has been suing and trying to get a bunch of emulator sites shut down. We're going to discuss whether or not this is because of them putting more focus on getting those emulators and ROMs onto their own platform, whether that is like a Game Boy Advanced Mini or Classic Edition, or if they're just going to release them on the Switch. So, you know, like if you can go out and just download it for free, then, you know, you're not likely going to pay for it unless you're just really into supporting Nintendo. So that's just my opinion on why they're now suddenly going after all of these emulator sites. But we're going to discuss that, and we have a news roundup for the next Zelda game. Basically some interviews and stuff from Miyamoto, Aonuma, others at Nintendo talking about what they would like for the next Zelda game. And then we're going to get into a discussion topic on 5 Zelda secrets that you may or may not know. And as always, we're going to end the podcast. I know him. His podcast is awesome. Thank you, Ben. Stealth is awesome. So, as always, we're going to end the podcast with a mailbag where we'll go through and answer a few questions each from all of you guys. If you would like to guarantee your question to be featured on the show, because sometimes we just have too many, we can't get to all of them, you can go to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can support us, get cool shirts like this or a bunch of other stuff, and yeah, guarantee your question to be featured on the show, just like Jacob, Michael, Elmer, Bootleg Boy, Gus, Justin, That One Pancake, Key of Time 15, Monica, Casey, Link, Use the Triforce, Megan, Lunarium, Robbie Morgan, Shadow to Us, Rusty, and Lovable Christy have. You okay, Daniel?
I'm just having a drink of water.
This is the face that you made after. I don't know. Let's get started. Our first piece of news. Actually, before we get to the first piece of news, Stealth. You say you're a big JRPG fan, right? Are you there, Stealth?
He's so stealthy we can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There you are.
All right.
It's like in... I don't want to spoil it. Never mind. There's an Avengers Infinity War thing. Anyways, yeah, so you're a big JRPG fan. Before we move into the first news topic, we can do like a sort of a brief interview, and then we can all talk about the games that we've been playing this week. So you're a big JRPG fan. So what would you say like your top 3 games would be? Like if you had to list your 3 favorite games.
My list tends to change like every so often, but probably my top 3 that don't change, that are always in the list: Dragon Quest V, game to me, Red Trigger, 6, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Recently, like I've thought a lot about that game. I replayed it again for like the 15th time, and I think when you replay a game for the 15th time, you have to put it in your list.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I'm not too indiscriminate when it comes to JRPGs. Like, I'll find stuff to like in all of them.
Alright.
Those would be probably my top.
Alright. Are there any games that you've been playing lately that you're really into?
I'm going hard into Octopath Traveler. That game is so good.
Yeah. Daniel...
I was actually going to ask about that.
Yeah.
I only have the time to play on weekends, but I've been playing like 10 hours Saturday, 10 hours Sunday for as long as the game's been out.
I was gonna say, actually, I think I saw that you posted a tweet saying that you really like that you're like taking weekends to actually enjoy this game instead of trying to rush through it because there's so much going on. You just finished chapter 2?
Well, I finished chapter 2 for all 8 characters, and now I'm about 25% through the chapter 3s, which the game's ramped up in difficulty a lot. Like, the game is not easy.
Alright.
Yeah,
I've been trying to balance that with Captain Toad, which came out on the same day, but I just haven't been able to do it.
Nice. Have any of you been able to play it yet? Daniel, Kayla, Octopath Traveler?
I have not. It's funny, after we stopped recording last week, one of our fans, Mothy Tim, who it only just occurred to me that Mothy Tim is just Timothy, rearranged, but it took me way too long. But he messaged me saying that he's really enjoying Octopath Traveler as well, and you know, I told him, you know, I've been hearing a lot of really good stuff about it. I've been enamored with the art style of the game since it was first shown off, but I haven't had the opportunity to actually go out and play it or to buy it. And he told me a few details about the game. He didn't want to spoil anything, thank bless him. But I'm very interested to actually get hunkered down and start playing it because, yeah, especially like I said, I've been enamored with the art style since it was first shown off. So, yeah, it looks great. Looks great.
I heard I was listening to a podcast and they explained it as instead of like a typical RPG game, it's like 8 smaller stories or 8 smaller games combined to make one overall game or story. So I find that a bit interesting.
Yeah.
There was a game that Square released on the SNES in like 1996 or 1997. It was like literally one of the last SNES games. It was never released in the US. It's Alive. It's Live. It's pretty much the same concept where at the start of the game you pick one character, you pick another character, you go through their story. It's very, very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
That game was never brought over, so this is kind of like everyone in like the West's first experience with that kind of RPG from them.
Mm-hmm. So my thing is that I really want to play Octopath, and it's just like a lot of money for me right now. So I was gonna play through the demo because I heard that if you play through the demo, it's like a 3-hour demo, and then you can pick up from what you played to once you buy the game. So I was thinking about doing that, and then I don't know. I've been having a really hard time like actually like committing to it because recently Donkey just uploaded a video saying like that he did not like it. Like his review of Octopath was not very good, and for me. Well, I was thinking, like, there's just so much to Octopath. I think maybe he made this review without really, like, trying to get through it all. But the way that he kind of described it is that, like, the storyline was everywhere. And he just couldn't really make any sense of it, so...
Definitely a very big time commitment. I'm 60 hours in, and I'm only halfway.
Yeah, so that was my thing. I was thinking, like, maybe he made this review, and then, like, it's just kind of like, oh, wow, there's, like... This is a big time commitment.
Yeah,
the demo. If you play through the demo, you'll know whether you want to play it or not. I mean, it's a pretty good demo. It basically just drops you into the main game and like cuts you off at a certain point. So.
Yeah. So a while back, I may be confused on this, but was it you that posted? You named off some reviewers saying that they admitted that they had only played through like one character's story, or something like that, instead of like reviewing the game to the full extent, like playing through most of it or the entire game. They just played through one story and was doing their review.
It tends to be an ugly reviewer secret that happens where they don't finish the game, and for a game like this where there's like I just assumed because the game is that enormous that, you know, if someone in the review said that they or 40 hours or 50 hours, I'm just very skeptical if they finished it. But most of the reviews for the game were actually very, very positive, which it's surprising and not surprising because it doesn't really fit the mold that most RPGs are nowadays. It's very different.
Yeah, like the, I guess this is kind of getting off topic a little bit, but like the way that people review stuff, for me, I think if they play through the main story and then do, or at least most of the main story, and do some of the side quests and stuff, like using Breath of the Wild as an example, if you go through all of the Divine Beasts, get the memories, and beat Ganon, then I would be happy with that person reviewing the game. Even if they don't go out to get like all of the Koroks or all of the side quests and stuff,
Yeah,
as
I
long
agree.
as they like nibble around. But like with this game, with it being like 8 different stories or like 8 different characters, if someone's only playing 1 or 2, then if they picked like a character who just has an uninteresting story where the other guys or the other characters may have more interesting stories, then they could give it a bad review without experiencing any of the actual fun parts. So that was just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I don't think a reviewer has to like 100% a game, because for some games that's very hard. But for a JRPG, it's been a problem where reviewers haven't been finishing the game because JRPGs are very long.
Yeah. All right. I guess we can get started on the news story if everybody's ready.
We just had a little Octopath segment, you know.
Yeah. All right. First, really quick. This will take 2 seconds. Daniel, what games have you been playing lately?
Okay, so I kind of had been playing it for a bit, and then I dropped it to play Splatoon 2's Octo expansion. Then I finished that. I kind of came back to Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
Again?
Yeah, well, no, I started playing it before, and then I stopped, and now I'm like kind of back on it. So I love that game.
I played
It's so good.
with you on the plane.
It's so good. It's so good. So I got through just like the whole, what's it, the fruity world, the one where they have like the fruity factory. And so those are some of the best levels of the game, and the music is phenomenal. Honestly, it's so good. I still don't fully understand why anyone would pick anybody other than Dixie as their sidekick in any of the levels. There's no reason for any other character. But yeah, it's phenomenal. I love that game to bits. Yeah, and other than that, I've been starting through Breath of the Wild over again because I'm apparently addicted to Zelda. If anyone didn't know already that I really like Zelda, I feel like just looking at my area around me, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've been playing through Master Mode on Breath of the Wild again. For the 3rd time, and it's I'm still finding Koroks that I didn't find before.
Oh, nice.
Right?
So, yeah,
So
it's a
not
little
like
ridiculous.
Gibbs, who went through and found all the Koroks 2 or 3 separate times.
No. My rule is I'll get enough to fully expand my inventory, and then I'll stop looking for them intentionally. If I still find them, I'll get them, but I won't continue like actively seeking them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just even areas I've treaded before or everything, I've played through like every area of the game on my last run very thoroughly, but I'm still finding Korok seeds I didn't find before. It's a little ridiculous. But yeah.
What about you, Kayla? Have you been playing through anything recently?
I also started playing Breath of the Wild again. Other than that, I've been playing like Hollow Knight. Still trying to get through that because that game is like, it's really fun, but it's surprisingly a little bit more difficult than I was expecting.
Ooh, I've been interested in that game as well.
It's
tell
really
me more.
fun. I really like it. It has a great soundtrack. It just has a really great vibe to it. You kind of like, you unlock like little abilities that don't really change the game too much, but they make some things easier to get. So far, I haven't really figured out what the storyline is. Still working on that. Yeah, and then other than that, I've been playing so much Stardew Valley. I currently have a farm with my boyfriend, and we are in our 2nd year. And farming is great. I love farming simulators where you can go into the dungeon and kill slimes. Yeah.
I watch so many Stardew Valley Let's Plays on YouTube, and I've never played it.
It's so good!
See,
I'll
I know.
say here, I haven't played it either.
I've
but
personally put about 70 hours into the game. I have a friend that has 360 hours on that game.
Much better than games on Switch currently.
See, that's why I started playing Stardew Valley, is because I really want another Harvest Moon game, but for me, the last good Harvest Moon game would have been A Wonderful Life. And here I am.
Alright, so I have, I guess, same as you guys, been replaying through Breath of the Wild, but for separate reasons. Not necessarily to play the game, but just looking for, like, information and stuff to help on videos. But we can finally get to our first piece of news, which is Inti Creates CEO wants to remake Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. This comes from Nintendo Enthusiast, and the article's kind of short, so I guess I'll just read over it. It says Inti Creates has quite a solid history of game development, ranging from Mega Man, Azure Striker Gunvolt, don't know if I pronounced that right, to the recent Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. The latest issue of Nintendo Force features an interview with Inti Creates CEO Takuya Eizu, again, I hope I pronounced that correctly, where the executive expressed interest in a Zelda 2 remake, quoted as saying, "Just one? Well, I would love to make a new The Adventure of Link for a modern era." Now, I didn't put this on necessarily just for the news, because there's been lots of developers and designers say that they would love to work on the Zelda series, but with this specifically, because Nintendo's been bringing these older 2D side-scrolling games and kind of modernizing them. I think the first was with New Super Mario Bros., where they added in 3D character models and multiplayer and everything instead of just having, you know, like 2D sprites or whatever like it used to be. Recently, they had Metroid 2 Samus Returns remade for the 3DS, so with them sort of having a pattern on doing this, I thought it would be interesting to talk about what we personally would like to see. I was talking about this earlier with Daniel and Caleb, but there was an interview with Miyamoto where he was asked about what he thought the worst game that he's ever made was. Not necessarily the worst Zelda game, but just the worst game, or the one that he likes the least. And he said Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. And it made me think about how in other interviews, whenever they were talking about remaking Ocarina of Time 3D or Wind Waker HD, they said that they really liked it because it gave them not only an opportunity to bring a classic game to a new generation, which is basically the entire point of a remake, but it also gives them a chance to go back and fix some of the stuff that they didn't like about the original, or some of the problems, which in Ocarina of Time 3D, they switched the iron boots, so now it's an equipable item, so you don't have to constantly pause the game to go back and forth. They made the water temple a little bit easier, adding like the lines and everything, showing you where to go. With Wind Waker HD, they completely cut out like half of the Triforce quest. Twilight Princess HD, they shortened all of the Tears of Light segments, so I think instead of 12 or however many there were, maybe 16, I don't really know. I
think it was 16 and they chopped it to like 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah, so they went through and like fixed a lot of the stuff that people either had trouble with or didn't like about the older games. And with Zelda 2, where Miyamoto said that it was his least favorite game that he's worked on, that there was a lot of issues with it, then I think this would be a prime example to do what he said that he liked to do with working on the remakes, which is going back to fix all of the issues. And where this was originally an NES game, there was a lot of limitations for the systems, like possibly a lot of ideas that they would have loved to implement, but just couldn't because it was an NES and, 8-bit console or whatever. So with the remake, sort of like how whenever they remade Samus, or Metroid 2 Samus Returns for the 3DS, they added in some new features and everything. They didn't just remake it, they completely changed the way it looks. It still looks respectful to the original art style, but it's 3D models instead of 2D character sprites. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about how you think, if they did remake this game, how would they do it? Would they keep like just make it look like a fancier 2D sprite based Zelda 2? Do you think they would make it a 3D character models and 3D landscape and kind of make it like 2.5D like they have with some of the other games like New Super Mario Bros, Metroid Samus Returns? Do you think they would go through, fix the dungeons, or add more side quests or NPCs to make the towns or the villages actually feel more alive? So, since you are our guest, Stealth, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's something that could actually happen? And what would you like to see done with it if they did remake it?
To your first question, I think at this point anything can happen. If you were gonna tell me that Mercury Steam was gonna remake Metroid 2, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So it's realm of possibility. Is a really, really, really good studio, and I would like to see them get handed really any Nintendo can do with it. I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Like Zelda 2 is like the only one that I haven't played in the entire series. It just wasn't really a game I was that interested in. Obviously, if they remade it, they would give it a graphical overhaul. Given like where it is in the timeline, I think it would look really good in like the Link Between Worlds engine. I think most games would. I've actually wanted like Link's Awakening and the Oracle's games in that engine too, but that's besides the point. They would definitely see what players back in the late 80s and probably try and fix that.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that they could do, but I think the most important thing they could do with it is the graphical update. I didn't really think about the A Link Between Worlds style being on it because that's more of like the top-down 2D game. So would you want it to look more? Well, actually, I guess when you're in the overworld, it is top-down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go to the villages or the temples, that's when
it's side-scrolling.
Yeah. So that is very interesting that it would have the two separate styles. Like it would have the 2D side-scrolling and the top-down. I haven't even really thought about that. I was just focusing on the side-scrolling aspect of it. But that's really interesting. Is there anything like gameplay-wise or anything that you would change to it? Hello? Alright, maybe
Stealth, we can't hear you.
Maybe he had a mic issue. Daniel.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Did you like
Yeah, I never played it, so like I really don't know. I've read about the game. I know about it. I know about its gameplay mechanics and all that, but really I'm not that well versed in it to really say what I would change.
Yeah, there was it was either Tevi or Jacob, who everybody knows from the Discord. One of them was joking around about if they did remake it, they should not change how you're able to like cheese the main boss at the end, where you just like hide in the corner and keep attacking.
Yeah, I don't think they would change that because it's just like with Ocarina of Time, they left the glitches in the 3D version.
Yeah.
Or 3DS version. Intentionally so, even. They're like, yeah, we don't want to change the experience, so we left the glitches in, which is weird to me. But
well, like some of the glitches were fun,
yeah.
So
that's true. That's
like
true.
Putting on, even with Majora's Mask, like the biggest glitch in that game's like the 4th or 0 day glitch, whatever you want to call it, and then like putting the Fierce Deity mask on and going around and causing the game to crash every time you talk to someone.
Like infamous Zelda glitches, that's the only one I've intentionally gone to do is putting on the Fierce Deity mask outside of the boss rooms, just because it's heckin' fun.
So this is very off topic, but when I was younger, I experimented, and then I ended up doing an actual video of this from a long time ago. But it was so there are two different glitches in Majora's Mask that I like to do. One was having Epona in Clocktown. So like you can like go and save on one profile while you're on Epona, like at some random owl statue, and then on the original profile, if you save in Clocktown, for some reason it confuses the game, so when you start back in Clocktown, you're on Epona in Clocktown. But there's also a glitch where you know, you can put on the Fierce Deity mask or whatever. So I had both glitches like working at the same time, to where I was Fierce Deity on Epona in Clocktown, and it completely confused the game to where like everything was in first person instead of the normal 3D perspective, and like
weird.
Walking around was just I don't know, like it was the weirdest thing. And then his character model is not made for the young Epona, so he looks like a giant crushing the, I don't know. It's anyways, Zelda 2, Daniel.
Oh right. So yeah, you know, we mentioned Stealth, you mentioned Mercury Stream making Metroid seeming like such an unlikely thing. Just as a shameless plug, Jesse, didn't we do a I'm pretty sure we mentioned that in a video a long time ago, that like kind of predicting Mercury Stream is making the next Metroid game.
Oh yeah, there was there was a canceled game that they were working, like a rumored canceled game, and then for the 3DS, and then they ended up working on the actual remake.
What's funny is because they had to. It wasn't, I guess, their first go at Metroid because of that, which I always find kind of funny. But with Zelda 2, I wouldn't want them to give it quite as much of an overhaul as they did with Samus Returns. I think in that style, like that 2.5D, I think that's the way they go, where they keep sort of the 2D aspects, but use 3D models for all the characters and levels and everything. But with Samus Returns, the overall structure of the maps is the same, but all the details to what power-ups you get, where you get them, how those power-ups work, everything like that, all those little details are completely different. Like if you just look at the map side by side, you're like, okay, that's the same. As soon as you start looking into each room individually, it's a different game altogether. It's a totally different beast. There's a lot that overlaps, but it's a huge overhaul, which I think worked for Samus Returns because there's a lot in the Game Boy version of Metroid 2 that I just find just unplayable. But with Zelda 2, I don't feel the same way about it. It could just be my own personal bias. I feel like they need to go a little easier on what changes they make. Because I think like the overall world layout and the dungeon design is really good in that game, albeit quite difficult. So what I would like to see them change, not so much the design of the world or anything, but more save points, I think is an important thing, because in all but the last dungeon, if you get a game over, you start at the very beginning of the game. You still, like, you'll keep your items and your progress and stuff, but that means, like, say you're in the 7th or whatever, however many in the dungeon, and you get a game over, you have to then walk through the whole overworld and go through all those random encounters and everything, all only just to get back to that dungeon. So even just putting back in like every other Zelda game has, where if you die, you just start in that dungeon. Even just adding something as simple as that would make the world of difference for the player experience. Especially because getting to like the last dungeon, there's this like valley you have to go through, and it's like just this gauntlet of random encounters and battles and stuff that's just like ridiculously difficult. I would like them to I think implement a more natural difficulty curve. I still want to keep the game hard because that's sort of its reputation, and that's part of what I love about it. But it does spike from like, okay, now these are the easy levels, and then it just spikes to hard. So it's not like a natural curve. So it to a lot of players, when they start playing it, they get to Death Mountain and they're like, what? This is too hard, and they give up there. And that's as far as they get. And that's a big turnoff for people. But if the progression feels a little more natural, I think a lot of people would stick it through more, like a lot longer. Otherwise, I like the RPG mechanics that are in there, the leveling up, the spells, all of that I think should stay. The only other thing is in the HUD, just change the little block life meter to hearts, and then we're good. So that's my blurb. Thank you very much.
All right, Kayla, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's going to happen? What would you like to see changed?
Sorry, my entire thing just like lagged really hard,
Oh,
and then
I
Daniel
said-
was going like super speed, where he was like going like this and then taking a quick drink of coffee. And I was like, "What just happened?" Anyways, I heard you, but
I'm a wizard.
yeah, no, I personally think like same with Daniel, like keep the same difficulty and make it like, I'd say definitely graphics, like make it more modern, make it more accessible for people to actually play. Because when we talk about Zelda and we talk about how big of an influence it has on our lives, most people, like, they go as far back as maybe, like, A Link to the Past or even Ocarina of Time, which isn't far enough back. So, yeah, I think a big thing, like, if they did remake this game, I would love it because then it'd be, like, being able to show people, like, how terrible these games were and why I fell in love with them.
Yeah, there's
And-
Oh yeah, and they gotta fix the translation issues too. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much cryptic
leave in
stuff
the
because it was
I am
translated.
error thing.
Well, that's his name. That's the thing. A lot of people think it's actually an error, but that's his name is
Oh.
Error. And there's another character whose name is Bagu, which is Japanese for bug. So as the developers made a joke where the characters' names are Error and Bug. But a lot of people just didn't get the joke, so they just were
Okay.
like, "Oh, this guy's weird. He's an error." No, it's just his name, guys.
Yeah.
People
So
are so mean.
another thing that I would like to see is now, like, whenever Zelda 2 came out, like the first Zelda game literally had no story. Like, you just here you are. Go
Yeah.
Save everything. But the second one, they added the NPCs and everyone to kind of give you a story, and plus like the manuals and everything. But now all of the Zelda games, like even with the Link to the Past, which was the next Zelda game, that game was full of story. Like every character you talk to, there was like a prologue before the game began, after the game ends, and everything. So with this, I think it would be interesting if they went in and added a bunch of stuff to connect it to it, since like it does take place after A Link to the Past and like A Link Between Worlds and everything. It's at the very end of the Downfall timeline. It would be a good way to like put in references to some of those games, like whether it be someone mentioning like Hylian Island from Link's Awakening, or how Ganon has like been revived so many times before, or something like that. Like it would be interesting, because right now the only real, well, there's a few references. Like I think the towns or the villages in Zelda 2 share
Yeah.
the same name as the sages from Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, so it's sort of a like a backdated reference. Like
Yeah.
they turned it into a reference by naming the sages after the towns IRL, but then in the universe the towns are named after the sages, which is
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah. And then there's the Volvagia, so like the fire dragon and Adventure of Link. Like if they, a lot of people think that it's the same dragon, but some people think that it's just, you know, like a reference put in. So like they ended up naming
Yeah.
the dragon in Ocarina of Time after the dragon in Zelda 2. But if they could
Right.
go in and say like, oh, this dragon once again has been revived, because he was revived originally in Ocarina of Time. So like if they did stuff to like have it connect, that way if you're playing through it for the first time, then you'll see something to where it's like, oh, that's a reference to this other game that I love, and it adds in like a big push of nostalgia. So, and then it also gives like a connection, like even if someone's never played the game before, while they're playing it and seeing the references and everything, then it gives them a sense of like, oh, I understand this, like I can connect to this, even though it's a brand new game or a remake, whatever, that I've never played before, I can still connect with it. So that's
Yeah,
just
in the
what I
same
think.
sense, they kind of added, kind of going back to Samus Returns, they added in references to Super Metroid and to Metroid Fusion. Even though those games came out after the original game, they kind of added those in to tie it sort of into the rest of the series where it falls into place. And so it kind of gives it this greater sense of continuity. So doing something like that with Zelda 2 would be real cool. I agree.
All right.
Mhm.
Do you want to take us to our second piece of news, Daniel?
Oh, sure. So, the article comes from Nintendo enthusiasts as well. Nintendo forces GitHub to take down GBA emulator after DMC complaints. So, the words. The article begins. It says the war between Nintendo versus the emulation continues with yet another battle going down in the Big N's favor. The company recently filed a DMCA takedown against GitHub due to it hosting an online GBA emulator, that's Game Boy Advance. GitHub's caved in and abided by the complaint, thus shutting down the emulator. Now, it must be noted that emulators technically are legal. They only end up falling into the red zone if it ends up being found that the official code has been used to create them, or when BIOS files are openly distributed. The online GBA emulator in particular gave players access to free versions of various titles by means of JavaScript. It's most likely this functionality that gave Nintendo legal grounds to file the DMCA complaint, as this would count as piracy. This move from Nintendo comes just days after it filed a massive lawsuit against the company behind LoveRoms.com and LoveRetro.co. That is worth $100 million. Rather swiftly, both websites were shut down after the lawsuit was officially filed. It's currently unknown how the situation has continued to unfold between the Love companies and Nintendo. In any case, one thing is clear: Nintendo really isn't pleased with unauthorized recreation of its IP. On top of these cases, the company has also been actively trying to thwart the progress of Switch hackers.
Yeah, so this, it's not uncommon for a company to go after people like leaking stuff or hacking and everything. But I thought this was interesting because here in just a few months, Nintendo's going to be releasing their online service, which is going to allow people to play and purchase some of the older retro games on their system, sort of like what the Virtual Console was for the Wii U. So I think all of this is just Nintendo kind of preparing the marketplace for their official launch of their games. So I was, mentioning earlier, like, if someone doesn't care about, downloading whatever games they want, then what's stopping them from like, oh, okay, well, I can buy this game on Nintendo Switch for $8, $10, $15, or I can just download it and play it on my PSP or whatever, because that's basically what almost everyone bought the PSP for, was to play old Nintendo games, not the actual PSP games. But
sadly, sad truth.
But yeah, I think this is just Nintendo kind of preparing for that. Whether it be them, they mentioned the Game Boy Advance emulator here, where you can just, play the game online with JavaScript instead of having to download anything. So, if someone really wants to go back and play like Minish Cap, then they can just open a web browser and play it, as opposed to paying the $10 to Nintendo. So I think this is just Nintendo kind of preparing so they can make money and not have competition with other companies. But what do you guys think? Again, starting with you, Stealth.
I think that even if Nintendo wasn't launching its online soon, they still would have gone after this emulator, because Nintendo historically has just the idea that they're losing a sale on emulation or like bootleg games or like anything like that. They go after those outfits really hard. This isn't even like the first this year they've gone after. So yeah, I mean, I do think that, downloading old games through their online will be like a major source of revenue for them, but I think they would have gone after them anyway, quite frankly.
Do you expect them to like release some sort of emulator at the launch of their online service for the Switch, or do you think that's something that's still like 6 months to a year away? Even
like 2, 3, 4 years away. I'm not really sure that they're all that concerned about it. That they really, like, the indie scene is blown up on Switch, and a big part of that is because they haven't flooded their online marketplace with like all their downloadable titles. So I think they're trying to still balance how that's going to work. But yeah, just go after any outfit that would try to pirate or bootleg their games.
All right, Daniel, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, kind of along the same lines of stuff. Like they have been known to shut down fan projects, emulators, past things like that. And kind of like what the article said is technically the emulator is not illegal, but as soon as they start offering the games for free, that's when Nintendo is like, again, that meme, DMs to take down. Yeah, I mean, it's not too surprising. It's not out of character for Nintendo to crack down on people. I kind of am on the mindset where I see, like, they are going to launch their online service soon. They are supposed to be launching the sort of, Nintendo Classics is what they're calling it now instead of Virtual Console. We've already had Virtual Console on other consoles in the past where you can get GBA games. So none of this strikes me as out of the ordinary. It does seem like they're kind of gearing up to possibly have GBA titles on Switch, since the Switch is kind of in its own right a giant GBA anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. But it seems to kind of fall in line with what I expect from Nintendo already. So that's all I gotta say about that.
Kayla, do you have any thoughts?
I hope that they come out with something, because I have to admit that I love older games. I love being able to play them. However, I have never always been fortunate enough to ensure that I actually have the means to play them. So, like, for instance, like, I don't have a Super Nintendo right now. I recently bought my NES Mini, which is awesome. SNES Mini is, ugh.
I've got two if you want to borrow a Super Nintendo. Or I have two N64s as well. I have a problem.
And you recently bought the extra Wii U.
I have two Wii U's. I have a problem. Yes, you can borrow games if you want.
Thank you, Daniel. You continue to amaze me every day. Oh my goodness, amazing. Okay. Well, I would personally love to be able to, like, officially emulate games through Nintendo instead of emulating them through side companies like CoolROM, Dolphin, and, like, I love the things that they do, like, those emulators, like, provide for us, but I feel, as someone that loves Nintendo, I feel wrong playing games from Nintendo, but not playing it on a Nintendo console. So...
yeah. Something about that. There's an authentic hardware experience that's kind of meaningful.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
And, like, there are things that you can do to make it a little bit more authentic to play on your computer when you emulate, but it's just not really the same. And because I'm a big supporter of Nintendo, like, I would love to support them in their emulating decisions. However, I hope that it doesn't come with a very heavy cost.
Well, I mean, downloading games on Wii U's Virtual Console was, or even the Wii's, is
yeah,
it was
pretty
never.
cheap.
Yeah, it's very affordable for those old games, since they don't have to, like, actually print a cartridge for them, right? Super Metroid was like $8, I'm pretty sure, and that game, or Earthbound was like $8, and then if you try and get a physical cartridge of it, you're looking at like $200 because it's Earthbound. But legitimately, if you look online for a cartridge of Earthbound, it's ridiculously expensive.
Yes.
But my brother found a cartridge of Super Metroid, and it was like cost us like $70. We went in on it together. But yeah, just downloading it, $8, real simple, and it's not like the original hardware, sure, but then you also get the benefit of, like, save states, right? So
yeah.
It was worth it to download, I think. But again, it's a convenient way. It's affordable. For me, if it's convenient, I'd rather not pirate. In general.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, even if it's the thing that's weird, though, is like, I can't imagine them doing this for Nintendo Switch and being able to take these games that you emulate on the go. Like, that just seems weird. I don't know.
Not if you download them though. Onto
I don't
the console?
know. I don't know. It just feels really weird to be able to take like an
It's-
old game on the go with me. It's like I feel like I'm like in the past, but I'm living in the future, which I think would be amazing. But
Yes.
sorry, I'm just.
But I mean, like the file sizes for those old games are like tiny, you know. So I feel like it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to be able to just download a game real quick,
Yeah.
and then you can take it with you. That's part of the magic of Switch, isn't it? You know, the portability. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Please, Nintendo, give us a way to play
Please.
your game.
Yes.
All right.
I want to download Super Mario Bros. 3 for the 20th time.
All right. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we move on to the final piece of news?
I'm good.
All right.
Also, if you guys have been wondering why I'm like looking down all the time, I'm actually picking at that gross nail that I was showing you.
Stop! Don't show me.
Cameron is now
Don't-
pointing and shaming
don't- I
me
don't wanna
for
see
picking
it.
at it.
That's
But-
half.
I don't want to see it.
That's half the nail.
Yeah, I picked like that, like the. No, I'm not. I'm gonna stop talking
Stop.
about it.
All right.
I'll leave if you bring that nail up again.
So I kind of did this wrong. Usually I would have each person try to do their own piece of, like each host do their own piece of news. But there's some stuff that I was going to add into this next one, so I apologize. Kayla, I should have had you do the first piece of news.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I mean, I'm kind of returning. You know, I've been off.
Right.
Good news, everyone! I found a place to live. So me
Woohoo.
streaming and being on the podcast is about to be so much easier. And
Yeah.
my boyfriend is going to help me with getting a desktop set up. So expect
Woohoo.
me to start streaming more regularly
From the dungeon.
from the dungeon.
I feel like I have to yawn, but it's not coming, and I don't want to.
Just do it. Just
I don't-
pretend to yawn, and then you'll yawn for real.
I don't want to
Just try
like
it.
start the news and then yawn in the middle of it.
Just try it. Just pretend, and then your brain will be like, "Oh, that reminds me."
all right.
And then you, just try it, Jesse.
How do you pretend to yawn? Oh,
Like, pretending to yawn. Oh, even see, it worked. I just pretended to yawn.
Oh my god.
Didn't work.
So, Ilya, I see that you're talking about me picking
One
at my
sec.
nail, but this is a different situation. I can't show you because Daniel's gonna leave the way he's leaving right now. But
he left.
so
He sensed it.
I'm not gonna show you guys, but so I got an infection in my nail. And so like all of like half of the top part, it's like not growing in properly anymore. And then there's like this other part and it's like not actually attached to the fingernail. So it's like it's kind of just like hanging there. Anyway, so I ripped that part off and now I literally only have half a fingernail.
Nice.
Yeah. I was just curious about what it was gonna look like under there. And it just looks like a finger without a nail.
Yeah. I wonder.
Yeah.
All right, rank the top 5 completely unrealistic reasons Daniel had to leave.
His kitchen was on fire. His son ran outside in the full nude, and he had to go catch him.
What?
We're
We,
talking about reasons why you left.
oh,
The
sorry.
top. So there wasn't dead silence. The top 5 unrealistic reasons you had to leave.
That last one sounded pretty likely, actually, but no, I was just helping him open. He got a snack, so I was just helping him open it up.
Aw.
That's all it was.
All
Nothing exciting. But it's so hot in my place that I'm not even bothered by the fact that he just doesn't want to be dressed right now. So he's just
Honestly,
wearing like
that's
a pair of
me.
very short shorts. It's just so hot. Like I don't know if you see me wiping my face, but it's just like I'm just so sweaty right now. It's so hot in my place.
No, it's hot here as well. It's usually like really cool because where I have the air conditioning set, but
Mhm.
it's really hot right now, and then the
Yeah, I was
hat
gonna
doesn't
say, I
make it
recently
easier.
I got air conditioning for Cameron's place, so now his place is so nice and cold. And then I'm moving into the dungeon, which is a basement, so I don't have to worry about heat. Life is good. Anyways,
Nice.
let's
All
move
right.
on.
Yeah.
See,
So, trying to figure this out in my head, because most of the stuff isn't going to be on this. Like, this article is like absolutely everything on the next Zelda game, and then it has like 3 or 4 things. Like there's a bunch of stuff that it doesn't have. So I'm trying to. All right.
as a
I
side note,
think-
everyone in the chat was saying how they ended up yawning too, so it worked.
I'm yawning again.
Yeah, it's all mind games. Like with yawn,
Oh no!
they are seriously
Gibbs!
contagious.
Sorry that your airline lost your stuff. Your beard is gonna be forever curly because your beard stuff was probably in there.
No.
Guys, stop yawning!
I'm sorry.
All right. What's up, everybody? I am Jesse. Here with us is Daniel, Kayla, and the beautiful man that you all may
Wait.
know as Stealth.
He's
Hello.
too beautiful for this podcast.
Yeah,
so that's why
that's-
we can't see him.
Yeah, he turned his camera on. It was too much for it to take. It instantly broke. My laptop computer screen cracked.
Mhm.
So now we just have to have him on audio. But we are all here to talk about the next Zelda game. We're going to be discussing some of the stuff that we actually do know about it. Interviews from Miyamoto, Fujibayashi, other people who have worked on Breath of the Wild, talking about what they would like to do for the next Zelda game, whether that be the next big Breath of the Wild release or smaller A Link Between Worlds style 3DS game, whether it be on 3DS, Switch, whatever. Anyways, most of this news comes from DreamTeamFC.com, where they say, link up, Zelda sequel, absolutely everything on the next Zelda game, release date, graphics, rumors, Nintendo Switch, Wii U version, and more. The very ending of that tells you they haven't updated this in a long time, because they're not going to be releasing anything on the Wii U. But anyways,
No.
It says, a new game is coming, right? Yes. Nintendo producer Eiji Aonuma recently confirmed that a new Zelda game is in production, which honestly should be common sense. They begin pre-production of like whatever the next Zelda game is before like the last one ships. And like they always
It's
carry
been in
over
production since 1986.
Yeah, they just start right away into the
Yeah.
next thing.
And then not only that, but they always have multiple Zelda games in production at the same time. Like they'd have the handheld development team working on like A Link Between Worlds, and then they'd have their Skyward Sword Breath of the Wild team working on something. And recently they've had third parties like Grezzo working on like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask 3D. They've had third parties like Tantalus working on Twilight Princess HD. They've had third parties like the Dynasty Warriors crossover for the Hyrule Warriors, Hyrule Warriors Legends, and then the third port to the Switch. So like
Yeah.
in the past,
So if they start doing that Zelda 2
Yeah.
remake we were just talking.
yeah. So like the crazy thing here is like usually people think of like, oh, Nintendo, they're like, what's the next Zelda game going to be? What Zelda game are they working on? Where over the past few years, it's like they've been working on 3 or 4 completely different Zelda games at the same time, whether it was a remake by Grezzo or Tantalus, or you know, a port of Hyrule Warriors for like the Legends 3DS version, or the Switch port, like whatever it was. Like it seems there's been 3 or 4 different Zelda games in development at the same time. So whether or not Grezzo is now working on a Zelda game, I think the last announced game was like Luigi's.
Grezzo.
Was it Luigi's
Yeah,
Mansion?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're working on now.
Yeah. And then Tantalus or someone, who knows, could be working like on a Skyward Sword remake or porting Twilight Princess HD to the Switch, which everyone I think kind of believes is going to happen eventually, getting Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess on the Switch. Anyways, the first thing they have listed here is game director Fujibayashi also told IGN, I can't say at this point if it will be in sequels or in continuations or what form it will take, but I definitely have lots of ideas and lots of motivation right now. I think while we were working on both the main game and the DLC, it was a process of constantly getting lots of different new ideas as we refined the game, and finding new things we wanted to do. Even in situations like this, talking to people and finding out that people want to pet dogs gives me a lot of motivation, a lot of ideas for things we could put into the game.
Let me pet the dogs.
Yeah.
Please. At least you can feed them.
Yeah, so. True. Speaking to IGN, Al Numa gave a firm answer when it came to how the team wants to deal with Link games in the future. It's interesting that he said Link games, not Zelda games. I wonder, like, if that's like a...
I mean, I guess that's kind of...
That could just be the way that this article worded it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's more true, like, because Zelda herself isn't always in every Zelda game.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the series, yeah, it's weird.
The interview says, from Al Numa, I can't speak to what other companies will do in their own games, but I think for me, especially just in terms of the Zelda series, the incredible freedom that this game offers you and how well that's been received. To me, it means that that level of freedom is something that needs to be maintained in Zelda games going forward, Al Numa said. My eyes have been opened to how important that is, so one of the things that we definitely consider is that we always wanted to make sure the player could understand what their challenge is or what their hurdle is. We always wanted to make sure the challenge could be challenged, so we always wanted to make a linear way of overcoming a hurdle. This is interesting because it means that the next game, judging by what Al Numa wants to do, won't be another Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword-like game to where it is one dungeon specifically after the previous. It'll be more
like
open
set
world.
Order.
Yeah, like go to whatever, like wherever you want to go to do it. Like when you get to the Dark World of A Link to the Past, or in Breath of the Wild, where you can just go literally anywhere after you get off the Great Plateau. Although it does kind of guide you towards like Hateno Village and some of the other places, and you just naturally stumble upon Zora's domain and stuff. But anyways, it says, will this be another full game or a smaller project like A Link Between Worlds? There's always the chance the next Legend of Zelda Al Numa was referring to was a smaller project, perhaps something for the Nintendo 3DS. Alternatively, it could be an add-on, much in the same way A Link Between Worlds or Triforce Heroes. Will it be open world? Yep, Nintendo won't mess around. They're kind of restating the same thing.
The only thing is that this next point where it says where and when it will take place, Hyrule most probably said after Breath of the Wild. Where's the source for that? That's huge conjecture.
I was kind of skipping down to the last one. That's why I said like some of this stuff that I was going to bring up isn't here. It's like interviews that I remember from Al Numa from like Game Informer and stuff. But,
yeah, one thing I will say is it actually is a good idea to use the Breath of the Wild engine again, just because of how long it took to make and how much it cost and how many man hours went into it. I mean, I think Breath of the Wild is like a good base to build a new game. I just want more actual dungeons and maybe even a smaller world.
Yeah,
I expect that we'll see dungeons again, strictly for the reason that after Skyward Sword, a lot of people said, oh, it's too linear. So they based the whole game off of making it a non-linear experience, including making shorter, like bite-sized dungeons, like the shrines or the Divine Beast being a little less complicated, because they had to give you all the base abilities at the very beginning of the game and then set you loose. But because of that structure, most of the feedback for Breath of the Wild is like, we love how open it is, but we want more in-depth dungeons again. So I feel like they've been gradually like taking that feedback and running with it and implementing it heavily into the next Zelda game whenever they have that. And so I would expect to see sort of those more in-depth dungeons, in my opinion, to return in the next Zelda game.
And there are
huge worlds.
Yeah, what were you saying still?
And there are multiple Zelda teams, so one could be working on like follow-up, and the other could be doing a smaller thing, or the other team could be helping, you know, a partnership with another company, like they did with Hyrule Warriors. So it's like one game in the pipeline. So yeah, and yeah, that is huge conjecture on. I don't know where that article got that, you know,
About it taking
place,
place
but
after.
we
That is
really
odd.
don't know.
Yeah.
They could really do whatever they want at this point.
Hmm.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I want to add in. This is from other interviews that I remember. Specifically, there was a joking thing that Miyamoto and Aonuma did to where I think it was Game Informer. They were being interviewed like right after or right before Breath of the Wild released, and it was like 50 quick like rapid fire questions or whatever, and they jokingly said that they were working on, or they wanted to make paper Zelda, because they asked about Paper Mario, and I think Miyamoto or someone was wearing like a paper Zelda shirt.
Yeah,
And
I think
they-
I had it.
Yeah, and
He's
then the person interviewing asked if that was something they were working on, and he like smiled and laughed and said yeah. So whether that's a joke, who knows? Like I think a paper Zelda game, like for a 3DS type system, like they've had like Yarn Yoshi, Paper Mario. Why not do something weird with Zelda as well, where they had like what was the other Yarn game they had?
Kirby's
Yeah.
Epic Yarn.
So they've had like the Yarn Yoshi and Yarn Kirby. They've had Paper Mario, so why not make another?
Didn't we already get Paper Link with a link between worlds?
Kinda. I think that was the joke that that Onuma made, because he had a link
Yeah, which they
with the
reused in
painting link on it.
Yeah, and they reused that gameplay mechanic in Mario Odyssey as well, to where Mario can pop on the walls, go 2D.
Yeah.
But
Which was-
only specific walls, so it's a little less.
And they
but
they copied the talking hat from Minish Cap as well. It was like they had a bunch of the old
Yes.
Zelda developers working on Mario Odyssey. But anyways, I think it may have been the exact same interview with Game Informer, Aonuma said that he would like to take what he's learned from Triforce Heroes, which was the multiplayer, or the newest multiplayer Zelda game, if you don't count Hyrule Warriors, and apply what he's learned from like the multiplayer of that with the engine of Breath of the Wild. But Aonuma in the past has said like multiple times that he would like to make like a larger scale Zelda, like multiplayer Zelda game, but it's always, for whatever reason, come out as like, 2D Zelda games, which I guess is just easier from a development standpoint and doesn't cost as much. So we had like Four Swords Adventures on the Gamecube, and then Triforce Heroes on the 3DS. So if he did take that multiplayer aspect and bring it to like a Breath of the Wild sequel or whatever the next Zelda game would be, that would be really interesting. I know a lot of people think like multiplayer would ruin the Zelda series, or like, oh, they'd never make a 3D multiplayer game. It's like, well, the creator of the game is like, this is what he's saying that he would want. And it always reminds me of whenever they first announced Zelda Wii U before it was known as Breath of the Wild. It was during the same Nintendo Direct whenever they announced Wind Waker HD. They were talking about changing the Zelda formula, or like what we think of like traditional Zelda games. And one of the things that they said was that he didn't want you to think of Zelda Wii U as a single player experience. Whether that meant like adding full-on multiplayer like Triforce Heroes, or adding in tidbits of multiplayer like we see in the Miiverse functionality, which in a way lets you communicate with multiple people. Like, I guess you could say that's not a single player experience on like a very, very minor level, because you are interacting with other people. So like there's two very different ways you could look at what he was stating, which so whether it was like full on multiplayer or the just Miiverse functionality, who knows what he was actually referring to, because neither ended up coming to Breath of the Wild. Like, it was very prominently a single player experience with like no tidbits of multiplayer. The closest we got was with Wolflink, who was like an optional character, and it wasn't a second player controlling him, it was the AI. But I always thought that would have been a good way to include multiplayer, is where Wolflink is completely optional. If you tap the amiibo, you have a partner there helping you anyways. Like, I don't think he can go into the dungeons or anything with you, but he's still like attacking enemies, helping you find stuff. So what would the difference be if it was AI controlling it, or if your friend could just pick up a second controller and play as him? Like, I don't see how it would take away from anything, because again, you can play through the entire game without Wolflink. So whether he's being controlled by AI or a second player, why not add that little functionality in there? I always thought that would have been a perfect way for him to sort of give people a taste of multiplayer. Sort of like in Mario Odyssey, someone can control Cappy, which is completely optional, so why couldn't someone be able to control Wolflink? That was just something that I liked.
And that would be better than controlling Cappy, because for me, Cappy is kind of an extension of Mario's abilities. Cappy serves as like a double jump, or and to have another player control Cappy is like kind of disruptive to the flow of the gameplay, and it makes doing just like the regular jumping and platforming more difficult. Whereas having Wolflink, he's a completely separate entity to Link. Link is completely autonomous without him. Whereas Mario Odyssey is built around using Cappy well. Breath of the Wild, you can play through it without Wolflink completely, like you said, and you don't lose out on any of your abilities or anything like that. So for me, that serves, in my opinion, as a way better second player option than having someone pick up and be Cappy. Like, way better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, for me personally, whenever I think about wanting to do like 2-player Zelda games or anything, I'm personally like, I don't think I would want that. Like, yes, I would love to have more multiplayer games in order to play with friends, but what friends? But I do, however, really like the 1-player, 2-player method, where one person has the nunchuck and the other person has the Wiimote, and it adds for extra difficulty and lots of yelling and laughter.
Yeah.
Sounds ridiculous. but fun.
What is it, like Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U? It's multiplayer, doesn't it let someone play on the gamepad and the other person plays on the screen? So like if Breath of the Wild or whatever the next multiplayer Zelda game is, like if it was on something like the Wii U, then it would have been like an interesting way for like, oh, you can play as Wolflink with the gamepad and the other person can just play as Link with the normal Pro controller. But with the Switch, like, I don't know, like I guess it would have to be like online co-op unless it went split screen. But anyways, Stealth, what are your thoughts on a multiplayer Zelda game? Like Aonuma, like developers always talk about, or directors of games always talk about what they would like to do, and it often comes out to be nothing like what the company paying them to make the game actually wants them to make. So even though Aonuma is saying that he would like to make a multiplayer Zelda game with the Breath of the Wild engine, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But what do you think the likelihood of it is happening, or the likelihood of it happening actually is? And would you personally like it?
Well, I think the likelihood would have been better if Triforce Heroes didn't sell as badly as it did. It sold really, really badly for even like a spin-off Zelda game. So I think if that like sold gangbusters, that would have given them a lot more reason to, want to do another one. Is another one still possible? Sure. I just like at the top of the priority list. And honestly, I would like to see something more like Triforce Heroes, where really the whole game are just a bunch of dungeons, and you go through it with your friends. I think Triforce Heroes came out at a particularly kind of weird time when, I think Breath of the Wild had gotten like, and so it kind of had a lot going against it, but the game is really good. It just didn't sell. So I would like to see something more like that for Switch.
Would you prefer it being like the top-down style that the previous multiplayer games are, or would you rather it be like the first actual 3D, like behind-the-back camera angle Zelda game being multiplayer?
either one, it wouldn't really make too much of a difference to me, just as long as like the dungeons are really creative and the weapons they use are really creative. That's really what I care about.
All right. Daniel, Kayla, do you guys have any final thoughts on this?
Well, I'm not objectively opposed to multiplayer in Zelda. I think the biggest issue, and the reason I own Triforce Heroes but have never finished it, is because when playing a game like Breath of the Wild or any other one-player Zelda game, I can sit down on my own time and play it. Whereas trying to play through Force Swords or Triforce Heroes or something, like, it's clearly built around playing with other people, and getting those other people together is a far bigger challenge than any dungeon in the game. So that makes it more difficult to play through it, and I feel like, oh, my gaming is suddenly dependent on other people being present, and that just makes it so much more difficult for me to actually get into the game. So I would rather it be like an optional 2-player thing where like a second player can come in and you can do co-op, or there are lots of other games that do it, Borderlands being a great example, where it's an awesome single-player experience, but it's also a really fun co-op experience. So there's lots of games that do that, and I think if that's something they wanted to do, that would be awesome. But if they build the game completely around co-op, it makes it that just getting you to play the game becomes a hurdle in itself, and that's a turn-off for me.
I was just thinking about the discussion we did about the like potential or the crazy ideas for Nintendo themed
Battle Royale.
Yeah, the Nintendo themed Battle Royale thing. So like where we're talking about multiplayer Zelda games, like it just made me think of the Pikmin idea that Daniel had.
Oh my goodness.
The crazy Pikmin just trying to kill each
all
other.
the Pikmin.
Yeah.
But
They
yeah,
will fight to the death.
I totally agree with Daniel. Like, I think if they could add co-op in a way like they did with Borderlands, where you can get through the story mode, just kind of in a different way. Like, with Borderlands, basically what they did is when you add more people, the difficulty goes up, which I think makes sense. So, yeah.
All right. I guess
It's just hard. It's just hard to do drop in and out co-op like you can do in Borderlands with like a Zelda dungeon. Like Zelda dungeons need to be built around co-op rather than. I think that would have to be like a separate mode.
Yeah,
or
I was gonna
something,
say it
but-
could be like an alternate mode. Yeah.
Yeah, because like dungeon design and stuff with multiplayer is a lot different than single player. Like if you're building it strictly focused on multiplayer, like there's all of the times when like you have 2 different switches that need to be struck at the same time, or there's 2 or 3 different switches that you need to step on at the same time. Usually in some Zelda games, like you could set like an Ocarina of Time, like set Princess Ruto on one switch, and then an example, you can go stand on another one, or you can use like boxes or something that you can pick up to like mash 3 or 4 switches down. Majora's Mask had the Elegy of Emptiness or whatever it was called for you to make a statue to stand there. So like there's ways to get around it to where you could do puzzle solving with one player while using multiple people. The Thieves' Hideout and Majora's Mask, that side quest where you had to play as Cafe and Link to run side by side, I always thought that would have been like a cool way to introduce multiplayer to Majora's Mask. Whenever I was little, that was something that I always wanted. Is like, oh, well, if we can play as Cafe in this one tiny little 10-second puzzle, it would be really cool if like my friend could sit beside me, I play as Link, they could play as Cafe, and then go around. But that would completely break the story of the game. But it's just interesting ideas. But like the story in Triforce Heroes is just like Link travels to the distant land, and then there just happens to be 2 people there that just look exactly like him. Anyways,
It's a popular look, I guess.
yeah. I guess that brings us to the very end
Of the podcast. I'm just kidding.
of the news. We got the discussion topic, which hopefully we can quickly get through, and then I guess we'll take one question each. But Stealth, we are going to be bringing on Ilya, I believe, because we were supposed to be bringing on Connor.
Yeah, what
But
about
he was-
Sexy Mac?
Well, Sexy Mac, he messaged me, but I haven't seen him in the chat.
He is in the chat.
Is he?
Yeah, he just said Pikmin Battlegrounds.
Okay, I see him there. Alright. Well, we're going to be bringing Sexy Mac on. So, Stealth, once again, for people, where can they find you? It was at Stealth on Twitter with 3 underscores.
At Stealth with 3 underscores, and thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you for
Yeah,
joining.
thank you for joining us.
Wanting to have you on for a long time. Lately, we've been having a lot of crazy guests, so I'm glad I was able to finally get you on while we have a space without the guests, because in the coming weeks, we're going to be interviewing the voice actors from, I think there's 2 left from Breath of the Wild that we haven't had on. And I wanted to mention earlier, Sean, the last one that we had on that voiced Rivali in the Great Deku Tree. I was unaware, but when he was on, he mentioned that the last game that he did voices for was Octopath Traveler. So that was really cool to find that out. But yes, Stealth, once again.
I've been on with him.
Yeah. Everybody watching, please stay there, all 28 of you, while we get Connor on, I guess.
Do a switcheroo.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab some strawberries because my stomach is.
Oh, what's happening?
Wait, what? We're
Is
having
the stream
5
still
people
happening?
on?
Jesse, what's going on?
I don't know.
Yes, Yellow Kazoo. Joe Hernandez has already been on, and he was amazing. I don't know if we're live still. I don't know.
Yeah,
what's
we're
going on.
I
live.
think we are.
Hello, Sexy Mac.
Hello.
Hello. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but Connor sounds a little quiet.
Hold on, let me turn my gain a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Wait, I'm gonna get strawberries because my stomach is growling so
Okay.
much. And so
I'm also gonna do a
Understandable.
thing.
Well, just I guess just me and you.
Are you okay? So you're just doing audio only?
Yeah,
To join.
if that is a-okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. So, there is the link in the chat that you can click on. That'll take you to the Google Doc, and then we're going to be starting at the topic of discussion. There's 2 of them there, but we're only going to be doing one of them.
Alrighty.
I think the
Let me
top
just open
one.
it up.
Yeah, and we're going to, like, we started this because people used to like listening. They used to like listening to us because we did a lot of Zelda theories, and then we started looking at other lists of Zelda theories that people made, which were horrible, as if they've never actually played the game. They just heard someone talking about it, and we would kind of go through and debunk it. And give our thoughts on it, and everyone loved it. So once again, that's what we're doing. I think there's 15 on this list, but there should be 5 of us, so if we each go through and just pick one, then that would make the list. Like, whether it's a good one that you agree with or that you would like to discuss, or one that is just completely awful that
Yeah.
you would like to correct.
Yeah, I'll use my vast knowledge of Zelda lore.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
is
none
Ilya
of it.
joining?
She's supposed to, but
But
She was here. She was getting tea.
she was getting tea.
She got
But
lunch
she
before.
came back from tea.
Illy Rose. It's not highlighting her name, so I don't know. We have
Maybe she's.
RPG.
Oh yes, by the way, shout out to RPG because this is the RPG. He follows me on Twitter as well, not CNRPG. But shout out to
Oh.
RPG for your birthday present that you gave me last week. That was so
what birthday
nice
present
of
did he
you.
gift you?
He gave me money for the Nintendo eShop.
That's so
No way.
nice.
I know. I felt so special. You have no idea.
I can if you're okay with
Ilya,
yes,
my birthday-
Ilya, come on. Yes, that's why
My
we
birthday was
invited
kind
you.
of
Yes.
a gong show last week because it was like, so my birthday was actually on the Tuesday, and then I was like, okay, whatever. I went to work, I came home, my family was nowhere to be seen. It was like, we didn't do a birthday dinner, we didn't do cake, and I was like,
Rude.
Yeah,
is it my birthday today? Like, literally, like, that was like the nicest thing that happened. And then at work, like, my coworkers gave me leftover food, and they're like, happy birthday, take free muffins.
yeah.
Oh, free muffins,
That's
good
nice.
boy.
So we
Free muffins. that's-
originally had Ilya come on the podcast because she was doing voiceovers, and we were like, why don't we just have her on the podcast if she's already doing
Yeah.
stuff for the channel? And it's kind of the same thing with you, Connor, to where the other day I was like, okay, here are the people that we haven't had on, and here are the people that we have had on that could return. And like we were talking about like Miss Click and Holly and Stealth and you, and Kayla was like, yes, get sexy Mac. so
Yes.
we invited
But he has to do the whole podcast in the Kermit the Frog voice.
Well, you know what? I can manage that. I think.
Have you guys
that
watched
video made
the
my
two
life.
Kermit videos?
Oh,
Yeah,
they're
I
so
have.
I
funny.
haven't watched the second one, but I watched the
Don't.
first one and I was dying.
Don't?
It's a bit too mature themed.
No, it's hilarious.
I mean, I think the
think
second one is just
I'm
fine.
23.
It might
There's,
be
they're
in
censored. But
I mean, it's
feel like-
censored. You know, it's like there's
I
there's
did-
no cussing. It's
I
censored.
did
Don't
put
worry.
the
Yeah.
beeps in there. I did make sure
Yeah.
to do that.
He bleeped out my not so nice words.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then after watching it, those two over again, because I wrote the script for the next one
The Mario.
that'll be coming out, the Mario one, and I'm thinking like I almost feel like I need to crank the absurdity and the crude level up.
Oh,
a bit
trust
more.
me,
Like,
I
need to
already
tweak the
recorded
script.
it. I
okay.
I did some things with it.
Oh,
I did a little
good.
playing around
Okay.
with it.
See,
So I was like,
Sexy
I'm
Mac
like,
goes
I
off
think I
script.
need to make this more somehow so it falls in line.
well, that's the
Yeah,
thing
no,
was in the Breath of the Wild script, because I'm a lot more knowledgeable on like the story, and then it's being told by Kermit, who is a Yiga or like a racist Yiga, so it was like really easy for the script to come about. But with the Fortnite,
Yeah.
it was just more information,
More of an information dump.
than an actual like story perspective. So like
Yeah.
you can't add in jokes while you're giving the information. So like I tried to
Yeah.
put it in there, but it kind of felt forced. But I think it ended up coming out good. Like the
Came out
the hotel
I mean,
thing.
I tried to make it work as
Yeah.
much as I could. Yeah.
And then whenever Connor gets the script, he does a lot of improv. So
Yeah, I just kind of riff on the script and just kind of be like, okay, well, I'm doing
Okay.
this, but I'm also gonna just say like 15 other things that are very racist but
It's
hilarious.
good. Oh, I cannot wait for the Mario one.
it's gonna be awesome. So everybody
my God.
watching,
The thing is, it's been a like a good week or so since I recorded that, so I'll have to look back at it. But I think it was pretty good.
yeah, it's,
I'm
it's good.
excited.
I'll be editing that for like this week because I'm trying to have them spaced out like a week from each other. That way it wasn't like two right beside each other, which was
Yeah,
on
unfortunately, the second one came a little bit later because I was on vacation, so I couldn't get it done very quickly.
But the funniest thing was on the newest Zelda Theory video, which Connor and Ilya both voiced on. Someone
Yeah.
commented saying like something along the lines of like, "Do this again, but with Kermit." And I'm like,
Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the Zelda timeline, how it's a divergence theory. Yeah, hello.
Oh my god.
Oh, I love it.
all right.
We're going to talk about how that stupid kid Link is apparently a time traveler or something. I don't know.
It's horrible.
Or is it Zelda? Was that the one? Wait, can we confirm that? Is that Zelda the time? Okay. Wait, Hylia? Is that it? Okay. Okay, so it's Hylia.
All right. So Daniel,
Oh, I
you wanted
love
to
it.
do the top one.
I do what?
You wanted to do the top one.
Oh yes, of the two discussions that we have listed here.
All right.
Wait,
so,
what? We have two?
Yeah, we
Well,
have
there's
two,
two
but we're just going to
lists.
do
I opened
one.
it.
We're only going
There's
to do
two
the
lists.
Oh, I
here.
didn't realize that there were two different links. I thought it was all one link.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
So-
they're both from Screen Rant.
Yeah,
though. They're
everybody-
the same site.
Both very,
Nice, that's
very,
exciting.
very clickbaity stuff.
This one is less bizarre than the other one. I clicked on the other one and I was like,
Oh man!
Am
All
I
right.
really?
Here's what you can do. Since we are all picking, and like we're each gonna pick one, so you can pick one from either list. If there was one that you liked on the other, then like it's all the same website. Doesn't matter. But we're each gonna pick one. I guess we will start with Daniel.
So wait, are we picking one that we like or one that we just
Does
wanna
not matter.
tear
It can be
into
one that
pieces?
it can be one that you love, that
But-
you completely agree with, that you want to discuss, or it can be
Okay.
one that this is the dumbest
just-
thing I've ever read. What is this?
Great, I've already got it.
All right.
So
all right. And then while Daniel is doing his, we can all go through and pick out the ones that we want as well.
Yeah.
If you don't have one picked, we can skip, go to the next person.
yeah, between the two lists here, I hope you guys have the Google Doc.
Yeah, it's
Already,
It's in the
Hylian and
Yeah.
Connor. Okay, great. So between the two lists, I chose this one because it made me cringe a little more. So, number 9 on this list by ScreenRant.com.
Well, don't get started yet.
Oh,
We
okay.
have to do the intro.
Oh, okay. We could do the intro. Hey, everybody. Well, thanks for
Oh my god.
That's the different thing. And then she's True Blima, and then there's Ilya Rose, and then there's just Connor's Nuggets, and then I'm Daniel. Okay, let's do
Yes,
do the intro for real. Do the intro for
Alright.
real.
Pretty much.
What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or Game Over Jesse. Here with us is Kayla, Daniel, our co-hosts, and then we also have Ilya and Sexy Mac, also known as Connor, here with us. We're going to be discussing the top 5 secrets or theories in the Zelda universe. Usually we do these lists because they are the most requested from viewers like yourself, where people want us to go through, talk about how utterly dumb a list of the biggest or the worst Zelda theories are, and sometimes you like to hear us talk about what the best are. So we went through, picked out these lists from Screen Rant. It is a top 15, but we are each going to go through and just pick one, whether it's one that we love, we agree with, we want to discuss with everyone, or if it's one that we just completely hate and makes no sense, as if the writer had never even actually played a Zelda game, which actually happens a lot in these lists, which is, I guess, why you guys like them so much. So beginning is Daniel.
Hey,
What is
everybody.
yours?
So on this list by Screen Rant, I choose number 9. The Zora are doomed to a monstrous future.
I was just looking
and
at
the
that
reason
one.
being, I feel like the person who wrote this article does not have an understanding of the Zelda timeline or how the Zora work here. But it reads, "It's not easy to create a fantasy race that can stand among the traditional fare. Yet Nintendo was able to pull this off perfectly with the Zora and Goron tribes. The Zora are essentially fish people, but with an excellent grasp of the ways of war and the arts. Alas, in nearly every timeline, they end up either as another species or as monstrous beasts. In the first Zelda, which is in the far future, the Zora, also known as the Zola, which is actually just a translation error, not their name, but are hideous, violent mer creatures that assault Link any chance they get. In Breath of the Wild, which is another late in the timeline game, the Zora, despite maintaining their culture and mental, whatever that word is, are evolving beyond their sleek appearances from Ocarina, and also becoming far more monstrous and shark-like. We're not sure why the Zora have such a dark evolutionary fate, but it's a sad fact of life in Hyrule." So, clearly they don't understand that Breath of the Wild takes place after every other game in the timeline, not before Zelda 1, because their conjecture here is that Ocarina of Time, and then they evolve a bit into the Zoras in Breath of the Wild, and then they evolve into the
monster
River Zora, the
yeah.
monster type Zora. But there are other timelines or in other games. I think the Oracle game draws a distinction between the River Zora and the Zora proper, and the difference between the Zora in Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time seems more like being chalked up to art design. They're clearly supposed to be the same race, but they've taken some artistic liberties and made them more distinct looking,
Yeah.
because they can do that. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, they have like 2 Zora character models, 3 I guess, like Ruto, King Zora, and then every other Zora looks exactly the same.
The console
they
was
just use-
very limited in what they were
Yeah.
able to do. So they had
Exactly,
to force them
so-
all to look similar.
Yeah, so all of them have like the same model basically. whereas in Breath of the Wild, you know, obviously technology's come a farther way, so they can make more distinctions between the different individual Zoras and make them look slightly different, much like the same way that humans look different from each other. You know, so I just feel like they don't have a full grasp on the Zora as a species or the timeline, because they mention evolving further from Breath of the Wild into Zelda 1's version of the Zora, which is, we don't even know if that's in the same timeline, although our own theory suggests it's further in the timeline, not before.
It's
just
also interesting they bring up all the evolution stuff, like them evolving, and never bring up the fact that these swimming humanoid fish evolve into flying humanoid birds.
Yeah, they mentioned briefly they end up as another species or as monstrous beasts, but then they have a picture of Sidon from Breath of the Wild, and they don't mention the fact that the Rito and Zora coexist in Breath of the Wild, but that they evolve. Like, they just don't understand what's going on in the games, clearly. They did not do their research, so
They
it's
also
upsetting.
The title is "The Zora are doomed to a monstrous future," and then it has what everyone refers to as the sexiest character in the entire
Yeah, the big
series.
sexy fish man. How could you not love him?
Like whether it's either Mifa or Sidon
Yeah,
for some reason.
yeah, like the most waifu husbando versions of the Zora.
Yeah.
He's just a big sexy fish, and we just gotta deal
Yeah.
with it.
Oh yeah, I see Sidon and I feel my heart.
Wow.
But
like
you know
that-
what though? You know what's even better though than the normal Sidon is Baby Sidon from the like DLC memory.
Oh,
Baby
Yeah.
Sidon, friggin' adorable.
It's the greatest.
and his little tail head thing is like
Yeah.
dragging on
And
the
just
ground.
just the
It's
smile,
great.
just the
Yeah. Oh, ow.
yeah, right there. Daniel.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great. He does the whole little thing, and he's
Yeah.
just Oh, I love it. I love it. So that's my pick. Who's next?
Does anyone else have theirs picked out?
Me,
I have
do.
mine.
All right.
Oh. Well,
Whoever wants to go.
rock, paper, scissors, let's go. I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't care.
Let's have Ilya go since she's
Yeah, go
like,
Ilya.
You're taking up half the,
The
screen.
gift.
So
Okay, on my thing it has Kayla in the middle, and then I went to the YouTube and I was like, oh no.
Oh, I'm glad it's you.
Yeah, same.
No. My hair, I went to bed with my hair wet, so I woke up and I was like, well, this is what it is.
I rolled into
That's how
bed
it
and I
is.
was like, time to do the podcast.
So I picked number 14. There's nothing worth saving in Breath of the Wild.
What about all the people?
I'm about to get there. So this is what it says. Taking place in the far future at the tail end of one of the Zelda fractured timelines, or possibly all three. The world of Breath of the Wild is a broken mess. The Ganon, with Ganon victorious and much of the civilization on the brink of extinction. Okay? When Link
It's already
finally
like the
awakens,
plot of the game, so
Yeah.
thanks.
when Link finally awakens from 100 years sleep, it's his duty to defeat Ganon, rescue the embattled Zelda, and save Hyrule. Except there's nothing to save, according to this. One of the main themes of Breath of the Wild is loss, okay? And the hopeless world in which the story takes place exemplifies this perfectly. Sure. With only a modicum of struggling towns and a handful of lives left in the ruins of an old world, the defeat of Ganon is only the beginning of a long and excruciating reconstruction that will likely end in failure. Don't know where they're getting that. That said, the green pastures of the nearby northern continent look promising, so perhaps we'll see a direct sequel taking place there. I read this and I was like, yes, okay, the game has its dark elements, and it seems very somber, and it's scary because we see very briefly in certain cutscenes the beautiful Hyrule that we all were like, oh, I wish I could have seen that Hyrule. But where are they getting the idea that the reconstruction's going to end in failure? Like, Calamity
seems-
Ganon's gone.
Like,
Yeah.
the ending
Yeah, like-
after the credits seems very optimistic, you know?
Like,
Yeah.
which pessimist wrote this and they're like,
I
yeah,
know.
everything is
Like,
doomed.
I
And
could be
also,
It's all gonna
cynical at
die.
times, but I'm definitely an optimist, so my eye was drawn. I was like, I'm cynical, also an optimist. Let me read this. Yes,
But-
no, this is just pessimism.
and,
Never
you
mind
know,
the literally hundreds of NPCs there, and they're like, yeah, nothing's worth saving. It's like, there are there are villages like Hateno Village is like barely touched. It's thriving, for example.
Yeah.
Goron seem to be doing okay for themselves.
Morellan
The Zora are
Village
doing
or
okay for
Lurelin
themselves.
Village.
Yeah, everyone is. They're doing okay. They're rebuilding already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lurellin's like a
Nothing's
tropical
worth saving.
paradise.
With them saying that everything's doomed, like the game ends, spoilers, telling you that Ganon gives up his cycle of resurrection. So it's like he's literally gone forever. There might be some other idiot that tries to, do stuff, but he's not going to have mystical powers because he's not going to have like the
He ain't
power.
gonna be Ganon.
Yeah, he's not going to have the power of demise behind him. So it's like, there's literally nothing stopping them. And if there is someone who is just a normal person, then everyone has, like, Zelda now officially has like the literal power of a goddess.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, why are you even trying?
My thing is like, also, how is that a secret? What part of that is the secret?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, like that first bit is like that's literally the plot of the game.
Yeah.
And it's like that's.
So- And then the
Like,
last
we all know
thing,
that.
the last thing on this that I want to say is like everything's destroyed. If only they had some magical item they could use to wish that Hyrule was completely restored. That way they wouldn't have to
Oh.
spend dozens of years building and
But
recreating.
Jesse, there is no magical golden item in the Zelda lore that can grant your wish to rebuild the kingdom. Especially hasn't already been used.
That's
in
nowhere to be
this-
found.
It was never. It's nowhere.
Talk about.
Because
Why would you even bring that up? That's just a tease. That
Yeah.
doesn't exist anywhere in the series.
Because, like, what I'm thinking is, like, in Wind Waker, they use it to, like, in the pre-story, they used to get rid of Ganondorf, or whatever, Ganon, and they flood Hyrule for some weird reason. In A Link Between Worlds, they use it to restore Lorule's Triforce. So, in Breath of the Wild...
You're making stuff up. That never happened.
In Breath of the Wild, like, the evil's already destroyed. Like, there's a few Yiga clan members left. But for the most part, like, they're not a problem. So it's like, you don't have to wish for peace. You can just wish for, like, all of Hyrule to be restored to its former glory. Which kind of sounds like a selfish thing when you can wish for, like, world peace, but they already have peace, so...
Especially if you've defeated Master Koga, it's like, I'm not worried about the Yuzu clan at this point.
Yeah.
That was their master.
Well, you
I
know what?
wasn't
Maybe you
really
should be
worried
afraid.
about
We're
Master
pretty
Koga.
powerful, huh?
See that coming.
We're a powerful fighting force.
I was terrified when the Yuga clan used to appear, and I, like, especially after I defeated
Oh, yeah.
Master Koga, and they would just start appearing, and I was like, oh my gosh, so I'd always have to find them, especially the big brute one, and then I just started
Oh, yeah.
getting on my horse and riding away, and I'm like, oh, you're contained to that one area, okay, bye.
Yeah. Just like, well, bye then.
All right.
But also, just a quick thing about the article number 14 that Elia brought up is I feel like they could have kept that title and rewrote the bottom bit, because there technically isn't really worth anything saving Breath of the Wild, because what happens after you roll the end credits? You're just put right back outside Ganon's castle.
Oh, yeah.
So technically, I mean, you're
From a
able to fight him
gameplay
again, and everything
standpoint.
still
Yeah,
goes
gameplay.
on just the same as
Yeah.
it was, even if you hadn't defeated Ganon.
Yeah,
So, I
that's
mean-
like a real world situation, though. Like, whenever people are talking,
Yeah.
like, their theories on, like, why Lake Hylia is on, like, the south side of the map in one game, but it's, like, in the west of another game. It's like, well,
Yeah.
there's no, like, in-game lore reason. Like they said, it's just fun to, like, change the way locations look, because it would be boring. So, like, everyone comes up with these complicated theories, and it's like, no, the developer said, like, they just did it because it would be boring if, like, the Temple of Time was in the same place every time.
Yeah.
So, like, they
I was
change it.
also thinking, like, it wouldn't be that hard, like, as far as, like, when they're saying, like, the reconstruction's gonna end in failure. I'm like, okay, I started a new file Breath of the Wild a couple weeks ago. I did Terrytown side quest in, like, 2 days.
Yeah. Like,
just
you built
need
an
some
entire
bottles of
town
blood
in
and
like
some
a
people
couple of
from every
days, and
race.
it's.
I was like,
No.
we can build Terrytown in like 2 days. I think we'll be fine.
So
Yeah.
And Rome wasn't
Daniel,
built in a day. Think
you,
about that.
you remember in the Ura, like the supposed Ura expansion of Ocarina of Time, like you would chop down a sign or something and it would stay cut down.
Yeah.
Like if you brought that over to Breath of the Wild, to where like you chop down a tree and it stays chopped down forever.
Oh my
So
gosh.
like collecting all the wood that you need in Breath of the Wild, like
Just
You
deforestation.
just clear out
Be
everything.
like, wait a minute,
Oh my
the Blood Moon
goodness.
always brought the trees back. Oh
the,
no.
the Great Deku Tree would just be like, "You're a monster.
My family, what have you done?
You killed all my family." The Korok,
Link, what have you done? My children!
all the
Just plant a
Koroks.
bunch of Korok seeds.
Oh, and then like you run out of trees, so then like the Koroks start hiding from you.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
They won't be yelling "Yahaha" anymore.
They'll be like,
"Oh no!"
all right,
Okay,
who
this
wants
is
to?
totally random. Sorry,
No,
this is really quick, really random. There was a meme that I saw. There's that scene from the second Avengers where Captain America's chopping wood, and the meme is Iron Man going, "Where's Groot?" Captain America goes, "Who's Groot?" And then it pans back to where all the chopped wood is. From...
Oh
I was like,
Captain America, no!
sorry, that was just my little.
No,
Yes, brain.
okay.
it's
I
it's
can't get the
funny.
bottom of my cheek because my mug's too big.
So, Kayla, do you have yours picked?
Yeah, so Ilya picked mine, which is fun. I
Curse you.
I continued to read through them, and if anyone was watching, occasionally I made like facial expressions because I was just kind of like shocked by what I was reading. So I ended up going with Link's Rude Awakening because this one was kind of, I didn't know this, but I kind of expected it. So the Legend of Zelda series has rarely needed any censorship during its run. The main exception to this was changing the names with religious connotations and the use of blood. Due to being a first-party Nintendo title, the Zelda series has rarely needed. It repeats itself. The games are intended for a wide audience, and nudity is less likely to show up. There exists one game in the series that it needed to have the sexual content toned down for the Western release, which was Link's Awakening on the Game Boy.
Oh, I know this.
Yeah. So
It's
originally
the German
it had.
version.
Yeah, it had nudity both shown and implied, but it was all with non-human characters. So there exists a settlement on the island called Animal Village. One of the residents in the town is an artist, and he's painting a hippo woman. And so in the Japanese version, when you enter the game, the hippo has breasts and attempts to cover herself when you enter. And then later in the game, you also encounter a mermaid, and she says that she's lost her necklace. But in the Japanese version, she lost her bikini top. So for me, that was like this seems like something they would do in Japan. Japan just has a really weird kind of like
Yeah.
something about naked people and that sort of sense of humor. But reading through these is very weird, and I also don't understand why none of the people that were seen naked were not human. And I'm really concerned about the pixel art that I'm seeing of the hippo with her towel down. Yeah, so Link's Rude Awakening, the naked hippo ladies.
There was another like translation thing for some of the monsters. I forget what they're called, and I don't want to describe what they look like. In the German version, whatever translation they used for one of these enemies, when you like hit it and it talks to you, and the German translation, it's too much for me, but that's not saying much. I was just like, and this is the language I chose to learn. Germans don't care about that stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
As
like, I
don't
feel like it's
Japanese.
more like Western culture, where like, gasp, nudity.
Honestly, they just have more respect for the human body in those areas.
Yeah.
They're just like, yep, that's just what we look like. It's whatever.
Yeah,
That's just a person, a human being, what we all are.
like this is
Except
like
for the hippo, she's
Don't
not.
worry.
Yeah, that's not even human.
The hippo's. This is what. Yeah.
I'm totally
Which
not a frog.
number?
All right. Sexy Mac.
Yeah, I got mine. It's number one. Nothing you do in Majora's Mask matters. So this one, it starts with like
You took
just a
mine.
game description, but I'll just read the rest after it. So, when you finally when you're finally ready to defeat Majora and stop the moon's fall, you break the time loop and save the day. Or do you? Your notebook may claim that you've helped all the people in town, but it's only what you do during the final cycle that remains canon, and you can't help everyone. That means Cafe won't get married, or Amani is traumatized by aliens, or the guy needing toilet paper continues to wallow in filth. Yeah, that's not true, because the canonical ending of the game is one in which you help everyone. We actually talked about this in the most recent theory video.
Yeah.
Dragon Break. And Numa,
is an example
the
of
guy
Dragon
who...
Break.
The guy who made the game even
The father
confirmed
of
as
Zelda,
much. He says
yeah, he confirmed
outright.
it himself, just like,
Yeah,
it's where
that's
you
the
help
canon.
everybody. So
Yeah.
that's just flat out wrong.
So yeah, just someone just doesn't know what they're. They probably
They
played the
didn't
game
do their
once years
research
ago and
at all.
didn't do their homework. So
Yeah.
good job,
Someone
someone
who quite enjoys
three-way
the
timeline
old
split that
Majora's
you can
Mask.
save everyone.
It made me a little bit upset. Just like, man, you don't know nothing about it. Stop.
Nope.
Yeah. Like, so in Majora's Mask, technically,
Mm-hmm.
like, you have to travel back and forth through time, like, at least 15 times throughout the game.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's a timeline to where, like, you helped the bomb lady, and then there's one where, like, you have to allow the bomb lady to be robbed so you can go to the curiosity shop, and then there's other like, there's so many times you have to travel back and forth through time that, like, the main timeline has, like, the 3 splits, but in this there would be like 50 different splits depending on how many time you actually travel back. So, like, everyone's, like, you know, trying to think, like, how can these 3 timelines come back together? And then Aonuma's basically like, yeah, the hundreds of times that you travel back and forth through Majora's Mask, that all comes back together at the very end.
Yeah.
So, for whatever reason, like, canonically it's probably not like hundreds of times, but I imagine it's at least like 5 or 6 that you have.
You know,
Like, I
it's
wonder
yeah,
what.
like,
You know, it's a good few.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder what the actual limit is on, like, the fewest amounts of time that you have to travel back.
there's probably
I mean, we
before
can
you
look at
can-
speed runs.
you have to do the first one for sure because you're like forced
Yeah,
into.
first cycle is a definite.
Yeah,
But
but
second cycle, you have to at least go through like one other cycle per dungeon. I'd feel like, you know.
yeah, like for your average playthrough, usually I would do like 1 or 2 that are just side quests, and then try and do like as many side quests in those cycles as I can. But you pretty much have to have 1 per dungeon casually playing through the game, unless you're a speedrunner, and you pretty much have to have 2 that are like just dedicated to the Andrew and Cafe side quest, because there's 2 endings to that side quest, so you have to do it twice, and they take up a whole cycle each, starting on the first day and ending like right at midnight of the 3rd day. And so it's like that alone, taking that into account, that's 7 3-day cycles with just
There's a
that
good few
one
side
side
quests
quest.
that you just
the dungeons
due
and
to
the
time
first one.
constraints, like you'd probably have to do at least like
Yeah.
2 cycles for like the other side quests.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like it's constraining to do it in as few as possible, because you feel very rushed doing all that stuff. But
Yeah, I'd say probably the minimum for like a casual playthrough is probably like at least 8 or 10.
yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. So, of course, if you're a speedrunner, you can probably do it in like 1
Like
or
3.
2. But yeah, like not counting the first one, like
Yeah,
just a
not 'cause
couple.
the first
But,
one, yeah, like 2.
yeah, but I can't imagine.
I was actually
doing
watching
it.
a speedrun of it on AGDQ. I think it was pretty good. It was like interesting. But
Mhm.
it was super quick.
Yeah, but then if you're 100%ing it, like you have to do at least 7
yeah.
to do 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, mine is not really one. Actually, I don't know what the article part of it says, but it's a topic that I really am interested in. It's about the Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time. This is number 3,
Almost picked that one.
saying the bloody history of Hyrule is haunting. Speaking of the Shadow Temple, which is just as morbid, if not slightly more surreal than the bottom of the well, what's up with the ghastly voices of spirits haunting its walls? Through Navi's translations, the common sentence is, "Here is gathered Hyrule's bloody history and hatred." What? Hyrule?
Wait, is that ghost voices? That's what the article's implying, but I always thought those were like inscriptions
Yeah.
on the
what I thought
walls
too.
and stuff.
Yeah. That's what
But-
I always assumed.
Yeah, but the article says ghastly voices of spirits haunting. What? That's
I've never heard
conjecture.
voices.
So you thought they were voices?
I never heard voices.
Oh no, totally not. I don't know. This
Yeah, it
article
says
is making
ghastly voices of
Yeah.
spirits haunting its walls.
That's what. But I always thought it was just inscriptions on the walls.
So that's one thing
that-
they have
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. So
One of multiple.
Unless there's like
So
someone
far.
that's
if there was a voice, Navi wouldn't have to translate it. Would she? Because you just
No.
hear it.
Because
So-
nothing implies that she can talk to ghosts.
And I don't think it is necessarily Navi translating it because like it reads like an.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually Navi translating it. So
Yeah.
I thought it was just Link reading something that says,
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, like when you read a
Here's
like
normal
it's just a
sign.
Somebody
text
who's
box.
Mhm.
Yeah, like you read a sign or a text box
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like, hey nerd, get out of our house.
So, continuing, it says Hyrule, despite Ganondorf and some monsters, seems like a rather idyllic place to live, with fair weather and bountiful resources, all ruled by a righteous king, who we never see in that game, actually. Yet,
Yeah.
according to this, it appears that Hyrule was anything but idyllic in the recent past. What horrifying displays of greed and hatred in this bloody history could have occurred? Perhaps there was a political upheaval or a period of time where the townspeople needed to be bent to the will of their king. There are no real answers, but something was clearly very wrong in the happy
There are
land of
real-
Hyrule.
There are real answers.
It was the Sheikah
game-
defectors.
So, well, that's one theory, yeah, for sure. But the thing is also that it's like talking about the idyllic place with a righteous king. But like literally, part of the backstory of the game was there was just a civil war
Yeah,
Yeah.
before the
right
game
before the
starts.
game happens. Like there was there. There you go. There's some
That's
bloody
how
history
Link's
right
mom
there.
dies.
Yeah, there just was a civil war in the game's canon right before. So as idyllic a place it seems maybe during the events of Ocarina of Time, there is definitely bloody history. Plus, we know from past games that take place before that stuff has gone down already a few times. Vati has already shown up before this to
Yeah.
open a war chest. The other Four Sword game already happened. Skyward Sword already happened. Like there is already some violent history at play here. And then there's what is implied to be a defection in the Sheikah already.
Yeah, the
not the
pre-Yiga.
Yiga, but
the pre-Yiga.
the Priga.
Well, and
Connor,
then
I mean,
Yeah,
another-
I was there for the Priga. It was an interesting concept, but it was something.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
so-
my thing about reading this is that, like, the Shadow Temple is literally located beside the graveyard. Of course you're gonna find dead bodies in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
It reminds
Like,
me
it's
of...
a
Yeah,
graveyard area.
so
what
it-
do you expect?
It reminds me of like in war, like actual war, whenever there was like a lot of bodies on the battlefield, they would just dig a huge hole and put them all in there.
Just a mass grave, yeah.
So maybe that's what the Shadow Temple was, and that's why like all of it's just like unmarked graves or whatever. So
Yeah.
like they built the catacombs and stuff, like it's underneath.
There are torture devices, are though.
Yeah, and
There
then
are-
the boss
There
of
are
it.
whole rooms that like the textures are just skulls. So like that always implies like the whole room is literally just dead bodies.
Yeah, it's like
like
the catacombs,
walls and floor and
in-
everything.
What's
Rated for
What's
everyone.
the city that has
Yep.
the catacombs underneath? Like
The,
Paris or France or something?
is it?
Oh,
I don't know.
I
hold
don't
on.
know, man.
probably
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
probably Greece or Rome, somewhere around there.
If it's
One of
what
those
I'm thinking
ones.
of, it would
We
be
are-
Rome.
Ignorant North American people. We do not know.
Yeah, so Rome and Paris.
That's what I thought.
both
Okay, yeah,
have
it is Rome, 'cause
catacombs
that's where the
underneath.
Vatican is.
So yeah, it's basically like that, where like the tunnels are basically lined with skulls and stuff. But anyways, the main boss of the Shadow Temple is someone who was like beheaded and everything, and like it was cut
Yeah.
off at like the wrist, and his neck opens up to like a giant eyeball thing. Which is
Yeah, there's that implication of like the guillotines
Mhm.
where which there are guillotines in that, like
But the thing about
falling
that-
blades, but
Is that if you're talking about how there was a civil war, like literally right before that, it was probably where they kept all of their like people from
Like
the civil war.
prisoners.
Prisoners, yeah, there we go. that was the
executed
word.
them and just threw them in there or something.
Yeah.
But guys, there are no real answers.
But
Not a real answer.
we
You
just
know,
came
though,
up
I
with,
have a
like,
question
6
that
different
I want you guys to
answers.
answer. Actually, I have an interesting question. How do you think?
Yeah.
So in Wind Waker, the King of Red Lions is basically King Daphne's. Like he's Zelda's dad. How do you think she felt about having a dad boat? Boat dad.
I mean, I assume that part came later.
Yeah.
I always
But just imagine this being like, "Hello, daughter."
So no.
Wait,
I
wait,
imagine
Dad?
it would be like.
Wait, why are you a boat?
Her great, like at least like her
Yeah,
grandfather or her great grandfather, because I assume like her mom or dad would have been a pirate as well, maybe, or maybe it was.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I
Like
think
he
the
could
implication there's a portrait of Tetra's mom in the pirate ship, and it implies Tetra's placed, and she is a pirate as well.
Well, it could have been a thing to where like if it was her dad, then like her mom and dad. I don't, because like wasn't King Daphnis like he was a king that died with when Hyrule was flooded?
Yeah.
Which would have been a long time ago.
Yeah, so it would have been her great grandfather or something like that.
Still a little weird to find out that your like great G-Paw is a boat, but
I wonder if she
just
like freaks out. Like,
I'm
does this mean
related to a
I'm gonna-
boat.
Am I going to turn into a boat as well?
That means that she
Will I
floats.
turn into a boat too?
Is this what puberty is all about?
Am I gonna be floaty?
No one taught
Oh.
me this in my education classes.
Well, I stink.
What if I get
Oh, no.
termites?
Isn't that
oh,
a line in one of the? I was gonna say, "Whilst thou sink or swim." That was part of the trailer
Oh yeah,
for
yeah,
Ocarina of Time before
yeah.
it came out. Whilst thou sink or swim.
yeah, those weird
Why
trailers.
I know that, I don't know.
And then
And apparently Zelda
Skyward-
Bolt, she's gonna turn into a boat too.
If you remember, Skyward Sword had the trailer where like the swords would just fall from the sky.
Yeah. You know, though, imagine what if everyone in the Zelda canon was just like, whenever they died, they just turned into boats.
Yeah, it's just a totally normal
Yeah, that
boats or other inanimate objects.
and then
Anyone with the
All
blood
those
of the
Potsy
goddess.
Breaker are actually just people that died.
Oh
the
no!
Kokiri turned into the Koroks. And then they just like chop the Koroks up and turn them into boats.
Ew.
Oh my god!
Oh
That's a massacre. That's like genocide. No.
All right, are we ready for the
This took a dark
mailbag,
turn.
guys?
no! Yeah, let's do the mailbag.
so.
I'm
Alright.
getting weirded out.
We'll do one question each.
Like boat death.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
What's up, everybody?
One
I am
question.
Jesse, or Game Over Jesse, as you all may know me. Here with us is our co-hosts, Kayla, Daniel, Ilya, and Sexy Mac.
Yeah. Why was I the only one that talked?
Because we can't see you.
So this is
Yeah,
the
true.
Zelda mailbag, where you can submit your Zelda or Nintendo, whatever, related questions for us to answer on our Hylian Gamescast. Sometimes we get too many questions and we don't have enough time to go through and answer every single one of them unless your name is Sean Chiplock. But if you would like to have your question guaranteed to be on the show, you can go to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can get a cool shirt like this, or get your question guaranteed to be on some other stuff. But our first question comes from Daniel. What's our first question?
Okay, I should open the Google Doc again. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that'd just be a decent idea. Yeah.
okay, so this question, I'm just gonna cherry pick one from our list here. Jonah from across the river asks, trying to think of an original question, so I'm sorry if this sounds negative. Imagine a scenario, it won't happen, I know, where the next Zelda is worse than the past ones, and the next one keeps going downhill, basically like Crash or Spyro. How would you react? What would you do? So I'd cry myself to sleep every night. No, honestly, I'd probably like there are Zelda games that I haven't liked as much as other ones, and I would just keep probably replaying the old ones that I do like
Yeah.
forever. So
The thing for me is like the story could be bad, but the gameplay in Zelda, like I don't imagine there's a way for someone to mess up the actual gameplay, because there is like the dungeons, the puzzles, like discovering stuff. As long as like they just even if they keep like re-putting the ice block puzzles, which are still fun, even though I've done them like 1,000 times. Like, as long as like you go into a dungeon and then there's one of those, and then there's like switches and torches to light and like eyeballs to shoot and stuff, and like enemies to kill, like the story could be bad. Like Triforce Heroes story is absolute garbage. You're saving a princess because she has to wear a patch. Like Link, canonically, it is the same Link from A Link Between Worlds. So he's just like, I just saved 2 worlds, Hyrule and Lorule, and I come to this town, and everyone's freaking out because their princess is dressed in like a potato sack. Like,
Yeah,
there's
it's totally.
yeah, there's absolutely no point.
It must be a first world country.
Yeah, there's no point to the story, but
Why, you potato sack boy?
but the gameplay itself, because it is just more dungeons, is still fun. Even though like story is horrible. So like, even like if Breath of the Wild 2 comes out and it's the same thing where Link is like, sorry Zelda, we just killed Ganon and the Yiga, but this one town over, they're having problems. The king forgot how to tie his shoes. I gotta go stop the evil wizard that's making people forget how to tie their shoes. I would be like, well, at least there are dungeons.
Yeah. That's the thing is, even like my least favorite Zelda game, which is Phantom Hourglass, let's say, I would still, if someone just gave me some random other game and they're like, you can either play this or Phantom Hourglass, I'd probably pick Phantom Hourglass. Even though it's my least favorite Zelda game, the standard is just very high, so it's still a very good game.
A bad Zelda game is still a great average game.
Exactly, yeah. So it's just that standard is so high for Zelda, so I feel even if the quality starts kind of going downhill, you know, I still can't imagine it falling out of love with the series. You know what I mean? I can't imagine being like, okay, well, I'm not a Zelda fan anymore. It's had too much of an impact on my life up to this point, and it's just too much fun. I can't see it getting that much worse ever.
All right. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this before we move on to Ilya's question?
I think that even if it did get any worse, it'd be like, it's Zelda, and we have dedicated our entire lives up until now liking Zelda. We're not about to stop. So yeah.
And there's so many games out. It's like, well, I haven't played every single game yet. Here's my chance.
Yeah, and Nintendo as a whole is a reliable company, I feel. So even if like Zelda for whatever reason was not that good, I'd just swap over. Mario games are pretty consistent.
Yeah.
You jump on a Goomba, and there you go.
Let's do some Mario theories.
Oh my gosh.
Why is Bowser so
Mario is dead.
Oh, yeah,
Waluigi
Mario's
is actually
dead.
in Smash, and here's
Mario-
why.
Mario's secretly dead in New Super Mario Bros.
Oh my
Mario
goodness.
killed Luigi.
That's
Waluigi
actually
has a donger that's bigger.
there's the theory in Luigi's Mansion that Luigi's actually dead.
Yeah,
Oh my
because
goodness.
Of the game over.
But anyways, Ilya, did you have a question picked out?
I do. Where is it? I have a real answer and I have a sarcastic answer, so let me
Okay.
just clarify
I
that.
can't wait for both.
Wait. I don't think I meant to do this, but I picked Jesse's question.
I don't think that's actually Jesse though. That's the
no,
thing.
it's me.
What, Jesse? Why did you add a question that you asked?
I
to the
didn't even
mailbag?
realize I did
Because
that.
I liked the question.
You didn't even. You asked it like so sarcastically. Oh wait, never mind. So I skipped like the should link and I just read like ever have a family in a Zelda game like.
Wait, should I answer a different one from someone who's watching? I don't know. I feel bad asking that. I have a second option.
Okay.
Should I? I don't know. What should I do?
Follow your heart. Trust your instinct.
Also, Jesse, I mean, your question, it's already answered. He's had families.
You
and-
stole
no,
my
no.
sarcastic answer.
So the way that I was meaning the question is like we always see like Zelda
Oh.
Link has to save his sister or
Right.
like there's his grandmother, his uncle. what if Link was in the position where he was the parent, and then instead of his sister
Right.
being kidnapped,
Oh.
he has to like save his daughter or save his son, because we know canonically, like, there have been Links who have had families, like Twilight Princess. Link is the great whatever grandson of Link from Ocarina of
Right.
Time. We assume who he marries and has a family with in Ocarina of Time, but we don't really know for sure. So what if there was a game to where it was like, hey, this Link is already like a father, this is his family. Like in Breath of the Wild, you get to build Link's house. Like, you just start out, whatever
Right.
the new Zelda game is, he has a house, he has his family.
He marries Paya and then has Link Jr.
Yeah, and then maybe there's like, you could even do a thing to where like you make a sequel to it to where you play as his son or something, and then like that's the young Link. Who knows? But that's just what I was asking. But you go on. Pick
Well,
whatever.
I mean, I read it, and my sarcastic answer was that like he's already had a family. But knowing how the question was probably meant, I was like, it'd be interesting if he was a widower, and it was like an infant daughter. You know,
That's
so
so
it's still a
sad.
younger.
That's like
you know?
reverse God of War.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking so that Link can still be somewhat young, so it's not like 50-year-old Link with his grandchildren, you know?
Oh, I want to see that. Old man
You're
Link,
"Oh, let me pick up my
he's
sword."
like retired, and he's like, no, I don't do that anymore.
No. So a link between
name in years.
Exactly.
a link between
It's
worlds
like a retired beat club.
has the old man, who is hinted at as being Link from A Link to the Past.
Right, the one-handed handstand
Yeah.
old man.
And
yeah.
then, like, after you beat all of the Dark Links, you end up having to fight him. And he has, like, all of the items that Link has as well. And he, like, wears the green suit and everything. And he's, like,
Right.
one of the people that's in his house, I think, or someone that mentions him is like, yeah, this old man, legend has it, he used to go on a lot of adventures and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So, like, it's hinted at that he is the original Link from A Link to the Past. So, like, there's old man Link. Let's play as
Right.
him. We have to go get
Well-
the diabetes medicine or something.
Oh my
Well, my
goodness.
second choice for a question, because I've been watching his streams, and he always gives a shout out to me whenever I come on his streams,
Oh.
is from the Zelda Collector.
Yes!
Yes.
He's
He
a fan of
asked-
ours.
Yeah. Whenever I go, like, it's funny that
He's got a
he'll,
great
like, give me
Instagram.
shout- Well, he'll like give me shout outs in his stream, and I'm like, dude, you have more followers or subscribers than I do. Like, so I'm always like, oh, that's so cool. Anyway, he asks, should Link and Zelda ever have a full-blown relationship and live happily ever after in a Zelda game? Which I would say it's hinted at in Skyward Sword,
Mhm.
as long as
Yep.
it doesn't detract from his mission, or as we were saying before, it's part of his mission, but a little more obvious, I guess, than Skyward Sword. I wouldn't be opposed
Oh.
to it, as
Skyward
long as
Sword's
it's
not
like
obvious?
reasonable. Right. Exactly.
It's very
I mean,
obvious. It's like
as long as it fits, because like whenever people ship like Twilight Princess, Zelda, and Link, I'm like, they talk like 2 times, and like one of the times he's a wolf, like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, I don't see that happening,
mm-mm.
you know. So it would have to be one of those relationships where they've known each other for a while. But I would say it should never have it, but I'd be open to it as long as it's
Did-
done well.
That's the
Did
thing
you
is,
guys get mad at me last time I shipped Link and Zelda?
Like, depending on the
depends.
games.
It
Depends on the game. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And
Can't I ship them at all?
Speaking of that, it's
we had the one. I think we had 2
Hmm.
questions on one mailbag where someone asked about Link and Zelda shipping, and then the next question was about like Link and Zelda being brother and sister.
oh yeah,
And
it's
it's-
like
Both of those for me.
I know, and that's why. Yeah, I remember that because that was before we started coming on the podcast, and I
Yes,
was like, yeah, I would love it if they're in a relationship, and you're like, but they're related.
okay.
No.
Some marsupial gamer in the chat brings up Zelda 2 also ends with Link and Zelda actually
Kissing.
kissing. Supposedly
Well, I
that's all
mean-
you get.
I think that's just
Spoilers
like, I think that's
for
the
a game from the
standard
80s.
thank you for someone saving your life.
You
It's
just
like when I
make
went
out
on
with them.
trips to Lima, Peru, everyone greets you with 2 kisses, and I was like, what?
Weird. That's way too up in my
It's
space.
like, I would like to buy
Honestly.
this gallon of milk. All right.
Thank you.
I've got like people like come up to me. I like go to like shake their hand or whatever, and they come up and hug me, and I'm always like,
Oh yeah.
so
LA.
if
I
in
try to
that
get
case,
everyone
it
to
would-
give Daniel a hug. Like we would go up to
Yeah,
like.
both of those questions were me.
Okay.
Because the one about the
Oh.
link was the very first question I ever asked, and I knew it had been answered because it was the title of the cut video, and I was like, oh, my question got answered,
Right.
and then slowly they kept getting answered, and now I'm here.
There
Well,
you go. That's the
what
secret,
happens
folks.
when you ask good
That's
questions.
the secret. But
Yay.
okay, further to that though, with Link and Zelda being in a full-blown relationship, the thing is if they make a future game where that happens, if they're making it in mind, it's not going to be a Link and Zelda we've already seen, most likely. It's
Right.
most likely going to be a new Link and a new Zelda. So if they're doing that, I'm open to the idea just because I don't already have preconceptions about those characters. So if they build the game with that in mind already, like they did with Skyward Sword, and it's even implied a bit in Breath of the Wild that Zelda loved you, but everybody loves you. Mifa and Zelda and Paya and all of them. So it's really, who knows where Link's head is at, because he's kind of a plank of wood in that game. But I love that game, but Link is not really a character in that game. But yeah, I can see it. I could see it happening in a future game, and I wouldn't be opposed to it just because these are new characters, anyways. So
Yeah.
I like it.
good.
Let them rub elbows.
All right.
Elbows? That's inappropriate.
Sorry. God.
That's how
I
you
keep
get
my
better.
elbows covered here.
You're fine. Also, give
Keep
me
my
that.
elbows
Shoulder pads or
sacred.
something.
My sacred elbows.
And you must collect the sacred elbows to continue.
Oh.
Sexy Mac, do you have a question?
I believe I do. This one is from Spider-Boy 2004. It says, do you think Sega should remake the Sonic games one by one? And to that, I have to say, no.
They've already tried
Because
that.
honestly, if they're just re-releasing, that's fine, but remaking them is a bad idea because Sega already
Yeah.
struck gold once. They don't need to go at it again.
No.
They've also they've ported over those games to like every console available,
Yeah.
and also Sonic Generations pretty much remade those levels already.
And Sonic
So-
Mania.
And Sonic Mania,
Yeah.
yeah. So we already have like remakes of those.
The only way I could see it working out is if Christian Whitehead was doing it, because he actually ported like the series Sonic games like over to the mobile versions, and those were fine. They were basically just full ports. But yeah, just remaking them, I don't know. I don't really see it working out too well, unless just him. That's the only one I can see doing it.
Yeah, and then like Sonic Adventure and like the 3D Sonic games had already been put on like consoles where they're playable in HD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like, there's not really.
I mean, if they're able to remake Sonic 06 and make it good, that would be a triumph. But I doubt it.
But that's the thing is then they have to tread over all the bad Sonic games as well as the good ones.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
gonna they start out with like Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, and everyone's gonna be like, yeah, all right, great, and then they're gonna start getting into the
Nostalgia.
bad Sonic games. People are gonna be like, ah,
It's like,
why are they doing this?
Sonic 3D Blast.
Oh, that's the thing. There's so many Sonic games that we forget about too, like
Yeah.
Sonic
Oh,
3D
yeah.
Blast, Sonic
There was-
Racing.
Sonic Pinball,
What
was,
Yeah, exactly. There's
Dr.
just-
Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
The top five.
No, remake that one. That one needs a remake.
We had the top 5.
I mean, it's in Sonic
canceled
Mania, so-
Sonic games, and there was
Mhm.
like looking at those games. I'm like, no wonder these were canceled. Like,
Yeah,
these
yeah.
are absolutely horrible. Like one of them, in development, they said that they reused the engine, which isn't uncommon. Like Zelda used the Mario engine and everything on Nintendo 64, but with Sonic, like they had the Dreams something that Sega made, and
Nights into Dreams?
Yeah, Nights into Dreams, and they reused the engine for some Sonic game. It was supposed to be like the first actual good 3D Sonic game, but they wanted like a brand new engine that was meant for Sonic, because in the Dreams game it's not like the camera's not meant to go by fast or whatever, so they had to work on something from the ground up. And they spent all of their time not knowing how to do it. Like they couldn't figure out how to make 3D graphics go fast. So because even in like Wind Waker on the GameCube, that was a big reason for like the ship to go so slow, was because if
Yeah.
it went faster, like it couldn't render the world in time, so you would just like fall off the world. So they had a similar issue with Sonic. to where like they couldn't figure out how to get a fast-moving 3D game, so they ended up making it so that they reused the Dream Engine, and then whenever they showed it off, the corporate people at Sega was just like, "What the heck is this? Like this is like pure garbage, basically."
I think the guy who like made Sonic, or one of the directors from the original Sonic games, like is quoted as like having looked at it and being like shaking his head and just like walking out of the room, basically. like just kind of like, no.
Yeah.
Cannot
Also,
handle
I think
this.
they'd have to remake as Big the Cat.
Oh yeah, just make a Big the Cat remake for everything. Like every Sonic game starring Big the Cat.
Yeah, right now
Everything is instead of saving flickies, you just use frogs.
the
Oh my
best
God.
Sonic games are made by Nintendo, and they're called Smash Brothers.
Ooh.
Oh.
But essentially, like Sonic Team could put their resources to far better use. They struck out with, or like they did well with Sonic Mania. And sure, there are a lot of remade stuff here, but it is technically a new game as well. They don't need to just use all their resources remaking every single game, because this just feels like beating a dead horse since they've already ported them over in HD already.
Yeah.
Not everything needs a remake. So
Especially with Sonic.
yes.
One of the cool Sonic games that I did see was canceled, which if they did make an HD remake for it, which is if they actually released it to begin with, was I forgot what it was called, but it was about Sonic's sister. Like I think it was codenamed like Sister Sonic or something like that. And then there was another one called it was a game based off of the cartoon of Sonic.
Which one?
Like the original
Oh.
cartoon. So like
Sonic.
But weren't there
They-
two like that came at the same time?
I don't know.
Well, there was not really. There was Sonic Underground, but then there was also the original Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the clips and
And then there was
gameplay of that
Sonic X.
Sonic game, like it actually looked fun because it wasn't about like going fast. It was more like 2D puzzle solving.
Mhm.
Like there was fast moments, but it played more like a less actiony version of like Metroid is what it looked like to me. So like a little kid's version of like Super Metroid, but with Sonic characters. Anyways, final question. Or Kayla, have you gone yet? Have you got a question?
No, I haven't gone
Pick
yet.
your question.
Okay. Mine
it
comes
boy,
from Bootleg Boy Advance SP. And he asks, what was the meaning of the Force Temple in Ocarina of Time? I mean, who lived in that mansion and why was it built in the first place?
Jesse,
Huh?
I know. I
didn't
was like,
you have a
this is his
theory about
topic.
this?
I did have a theory that I came up with like while we were discussing stuff on
While
the
we were-
podcast. Basically,
like
my
months ago.
my theory suggests that it is basically because people can't get into the Lost Woods without turning into Stole Childs or whatever. So, what's in the very back of the Lost Woods? The Forest Temple. So my theory would be that the Forest Temple is where they basically like where the Kakiri kind of lived originally, maybe, perhaps, but more importantly, where the spiritual stone of courage was secretly kept. Because why else would a mansion-like place be set up for like a dungeon with like a bunch of puzzles and traps and stuff, unless it's set up to protect something, and the only thing that the Kokiri had to protect was one of the three spiritual stones. And then when the Deku Tree gives it to you, like he doesn't just spit it out to you like some of the other characters do. What is it? There's a character in one of the Zelda games, I forgot what it is, but he goes to give you something and he just like spits it at you. I'm thinking of like the Octo Rocks from Breath of the Wild. Like they'll spit out like rusty swords and they'll be clean, but it's something else that I'm thinking about that does it from another game. Anyways, but like because he doesn't have any arms or anything, like he's not hiding it on him, otherwise Ganondorf would have gotten it from him. So like where was it hiding? Like where did he teleport it from? The only logical place I could think of is the Forest Temple. And then when Ganondorf ended up getting the Triforce of Power and was able to like take over Hyrule, because he wasn't originally able to go to the Forest Temple, as like a big FU to Kokiri Forest, like the one place that he wasn't able to go, he ended up putting like a ghost version of himself there to like permanently haunt it as like a way to like get a one-up on the Kokiri or whatever, because it's like I couldn't get there before, but now nothing's stopping me. So instead of just going there and like destroying it, I'm going to permanently haunt it. Like I'll always be there where I wasn't able to be there before. And that's basically my weird theory of what the Forest Temple is. Other people think it's just a place to worship Nehru because she's like the forest goddess or whatever.
Right.
But,
or Pharaoh.
Yeah, Pharaoh.
Like
That's
a goddess or something.
that's the one. Nehru's the other one.
A sort of widely accepted theory, I think, is also that people in the Wind Waker, you have to bring the sages to their temple in that game for them to pray to power the Master Sword. So I don't know if it's specifically the Master Sword. The sages probably went there as well to pray for something. And that's why Saria, or Saria, however you want to say it, ended up going there sort of because she had the sageness inside of her. You know, she hadn't awakened as a sage yet, but she had that feeling inside of her, and she was drawn to there, so she ended up going there before being awakened as a sage, and presumably maybe dying, maybe not. Who knows what happened? But
there's the theory that like all the sages end up dying.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think happened, but so because they kind of end up as spirits in the end. Like in the credits, are showing like, teleport, much in the same way the champions do in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
right?
like Raru's already dead, and then like Daruk goes into a room with a dragon.
Or Darunia.
Yeah, he goes into there with a dragon that is known to eat Gorons.
Yeah,
and
then he without the Megaton Hammer as well.
Which
and
was
then
just like a suicide mission.
Impa was like, oh, Bongo Bongo escaped the well, so I'm going to go to the Shadow Temple to try and steal Bongo Bongo. When you go there, Bongo Bongo's not sealed, so something happened. Naboru, you fight.
Yeah.
And then the witches like put her in that like weird vortex thing. I assume either she got teleported to like the void or she died there.
Yeah.
So it all kind of makes sense.
Ruto. I almost said Mifa.
Ruto. Oh yeah, Ruto is in the water temple and then she goes swims somewhere and then disappears. So I assume some monsters that are in.
Sorry, I get trapped in
the because she swims in water, but then the monster is water of the temple. So it's like while she's swimming around in the water, the monster could just be like, okay, well, we're just going to squash you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, next question, I guess. Does anyone else, what does everybody think of the forest temple? It's just like a temple in the forest.
I love your theory so much.
I have heard a theory. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch the video, and I don't remember who did this theory. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't have enough information to be sure how I felt about it. That maybe that was where Link's ancestors lived, and maybe his mother lived there, and that's why she went to the Great Deku Tree. It was like on her way, but then I was like, what about the whole forest getting lost? That was my only thing, but I was like, it's interesting that it could have been where Link's family was, but then they all died, and his mother, the Great Deku Tree, was on the way to trying to get to safety, I guess. I don't know. I thought it was interesting sounding, but there were some issues.
They're so rich, though. Like if they
so
had
rich,
his
mansion.
House. Yeah.
Seriously, I mean it's huge, big courtyard gardens and everything.
Yeah. All right. Final question, I think.
You.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
All you.
If there's anyone in the chat and you post a question before I find one, then I will read your question. So I'll find a question.
Just wants to keep it going forever.
No, I'm going to find a question, but then I'll look back at the chat just to give people watching a chance. So
also, Gibbs caught me in the chat there as a correction to what I said about Naboru. He mentions that after you fight her, the twin robot, they zap her. Actually.
Okay.
That's my bad. Thank you, Gibbs.
Mario Kart. Should Link or Zelda have a mother figure? That's kind of the question that I asked. Should Link ever have a fan? Oh, that was me. Okay, Zelda Collector. Already got answered. Which do you prefer?
When you read your own question, just like, ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah. I have a question. How much do you guys think they will change Breath of the Wild? Okay, that's an interesting one. No one in the chat asked a question, so we have CN RPG who says, "Game over, Jesse. King Bergerson, the benevolent." That joke's still there. That's funny.
I just left it there.
I have a question. How much do you guys think they will change Breath of the Wild's formula for the next game? Will it be the same experience, but with minor changes, more divine beasts and shrines? Or do you think they will only keep a few things from Breath of the Wild, like climbing and a smaller open world, but with vast and large temples and dungeons to explore? Now, my thing on this is I think they purposefully left out a lot of stuff from Breath of the Wild just so they would have somewhere to go and progress for the next Zelda game. Because in this Zelda game, let's say instead of 120 shrines, if they cut it in half and they gave you 60 shrines or even 50 shrines, and then they gave you like 6 actual temples, and then like they gave you the underwater exploration from all of the other Zelda, or like every 3D Zelda game except Breath of the Wild has underwater exploration. So if they would have continued that for Breath of the Wild, then whenever they get to the next Zelda game after Breath of the Wild, it's like, what can we do that we didn't do in the last game? Like, we literally did everything in Breath of the Wild, so there's nowhere to go beyond this. But if they purposefully leave out underwater exploration, sort of like what they did in Wind Waker, so I guess I was wrong there. But like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, all had underwater exploration. So like, what can they do to make the next Breath of the Wild better? 2 simple things is add underwater exploration, and add in the dungeons, like cut the number of shrines in half, and then use the puzzles or the rooms that you would have put inside those shrines into actual dungeons. Just like combine the rooms from like 10 shrines to make a typical traditional dungeon. And then, yeah, because like you have to spend the time, whether you make like 50 different rooms, 20 different rooms to put inside a dungeon, or you're making 20 different rooms to separate and put inside 7 or 8 different shrines. Like, you still have to work on all of those puzzles and mechanics and everything. So like, you're still creating the same amount of rooms that you would. It's just, instead of putting them all in separate shrines, you can just combine them all into a dungeon. So like, I think that's what the next game is going to be, is just like cut the number of shrines in half, give us a normal dungeon, give us underwater exploration, maybe a hook shot or 2, and there you go. Like, it's an easy way to progress. So that's what I expect for the next Zelda game. But what about you guys?
Well, I think I already kind of answered it a bit when we had Stealth on earlier, and we were reading that article about the sort of news roundup. I still expect, just based on Onuma's quotes, that they're still going to continue having a huge open world, and that freedom that came with Breath of the Wild's open air concept. But I still feel, because of the fan feedback, that we'll see dungeons kind of come back in a more fully fleshed out form. Even if they just have like the same amount as the first game, 8 of them littered around, but they're longer dungeons, I feel like that'll satisfy the qualms that people have with Breath of the Wild. I haven't thought about shrines. I don't know if they'll revisit that in particular, but I can't see why not, because having those as warp points and as like little minor objectives is really useful in Breath of the Wild. Yeah. Especially for fast travel. So, yeah, I already kind of went in depth a bit.
If you remember Twilight Princess, there were still like a bunch of mini dungeons in Twilight Princess. Like, you go into a cave and it's like a giant 1 or 2 room puzzle. Like, fall down, use the iron boots so you can like walk on the wall and press the switch or whatever, and then you get like a piece of heart. So like, instead of just a random shrine appearing, which in Breath of the Wild was a part of the story, if they just kept the same concept, but it's just like, oh, you bomb this wall and there's a cave going into Death Mountain, and then There you go.
Mhm.
So like if they made it more a part of the world as opposed to here's just this random shrine sticking out of the ground because Sheikah reasons.
Because reasons, yeah.
Yes.
So what about you, Connor, Mr. Sexy Mac?
Well, personally, I don't know. Like, I think what they're probably going to do for the next Zelda game is just going to be like it's going to be to Breath of the Wild what Majora's Mask was to Ocarina of Time, in the sense that they're going to use the same engine and do like, well, the game mechanics are going to be similar, but just with a few minor tweaks, and the overall story is going to be different. Like, it's going to be something a little bit more offshooty, you know, like sort of its own adventure. But one thing that is interesting is what I kind of want them to make, which is not exactly what they will make because it's just kind of out there. But imagine if you will the Portal 2 multiplayer, but Breath of the Wild, or like you would go through like different puzzle rooms and you could like have like multiplayer puzzles that require 2 people to solve, and like just a bunch of like different challenges and stuff, and it like progressively gets more difficult as you go along. Even like something like you could even have like different race characters, like Link as like a Zora, or as a like, you know, Gerudo. And they have like certain abilities and stuff. I think that'd be pretty cool, actually.
I like it. Ilya?
I was thinking, and someone kind of pointed this out in the chat.
I like it. Kayla?
What? I was thinking, and that's all we need to know.
No,
That's
okay.
hard enough for me as it is.
What is it?
She had
Ilya?
a thought.
I had a thought, or as my mom would say, whenever I go to my mom and I'm like, I was thinking about something, she'd go, did it hurt? And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
there's a
Perfect
reason I
mom
turned out the
stance.
way I did. Because my mom. Anyway, someone pointed out in the chat, and I kind of agree with him, I don't see how shrines would work in a different game if it's not a sequel or like a prequel or something, which I think I would agree with, but I do think there would need to be warp points, as Daniel pointed out, because I do see them continuing with the open world based on the statements that were made. Sorry, I'm chewing gum, so I hope no one hears that.
No.
So an open world, lots of climbing, but as we've mentioned before, you know, a lot of fans wanted the themed dungeons back. So bringing those back, and maybe I could see this happening. It could just be my own wanting. You know, you can climb everywhere except the dungeons. Like the walls are made of something weird, kind of like in the shrines, you can't climb the walls. So it adds a difficulty, which might bring back the possibility to have a need for the claw shot or hook shot. Especially if they can do the double again, so I can feel like Spider-Man. I don't know. I mean, I don't really think much more than that, other than, you know, new story, but keep the mechanic of open world and climbing, since everyone seemed to really receive that well. But I'm sure Nintendo would come up with amazing ideas for warp points so that we could handle the open world and giving us themed dungeons back in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like literally shrines again,
Right,
but just
yeah.
something conceptually, mechanically similar, so that we have that fast travel.
Yeah.
Well, if
Those
you-
little bite-sized objectives to get to,
Maybe
right?
they'll bring the aliens in this one like they had originally planned.
Yeah. No, like if you remember the
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, it was
Gonna bring
just
some
holes in
cows,
the
yeah.
ground. Like you would just drop
Yeah.
in a random hole that appears.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds playing in my head right now as I think about it.
Yeah.
And like sometimes there would be puzzles, sometimes there would just be a chest, sometimes there'd be like enemies to
Yeah.
kill or something, which is kind of like the shrines, except the shrines, like, you know, they
little more
actually had,
complicated.
it wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was an elevator that like went down a hole.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, which is actually what I thought it was. Before Breath of the Wild actually came out, I made a video talking about how, like, you know, over time, those holes in Breath of the Wild ended up just being the shrines or what. Anyways, I was done. Kayla, hello, how are you?
I'm good. My thoughts about this would be to take something that's kind of like Breath of the Wild, and instead of actually like continuing on with more of a Breath of the Wild formula, maybe doing something more like traditional Zelda that we're used to, but then using Breath of the Wild things to fill up the empty overworld that we see. So things like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time, how we have all this open space, but there's nothing really going on. So that's, yeah. include things. Let us pick apples or something. I don't know.
So you're saying you
Let's-
want
Let's
Twilight
pet dogs.
Princess Hyrule
Yes,
Field?
pet dogs.
Twilight Princess did have a really big Hyrule.
No,
in
I
it,
was
so
because
maybe.
it's empty. There's nothing to do.
Yeah.
It was a joke.
Yeah, that's oh.
No, so that's another
Good
thing
joke.
is so Twilight Princess, you can pick up your dog.
Yeah, how did we go from
And
being able
then-
to pick up the dog
Yeah,
to
yeah.
only being able to feed the
Just
dog?
like cats.
Yeah, and like you can't do it in Breath of the Wild, which is odd. Like you would think
Which
there would have
was-
been one person. It's like,
Maybe
hey,
because they didn't want to be claimed with like animal abuse or something, like
You
throw a
know
dog into
how-
a fire, you know.
yeah,
There are like the loading screens for Breath of the Wild, and they kind of like give you hints. There's one
Yeah.
and it says something about making friends with the dog. And so for a really long time, it was like, oh, if you make friends with the dog, da 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 da, like it'll be a good thing. So like I kept
Yo,
feeding this dog and trying to be its friend, and then I realized that I think this might just be like a guideline for the world. Like, be good to dogs, and then you make a friend.
no. So
But actually,
Fun thing
if you,
is,
like,
if you
crouch-
follow
You're
them
supposed
whenever
to
they
follow
like go
it.
searching around, you can find treasure actually.
Oh
Yeah.
really? Oh, there's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
actual
Yeah,
reason for
sometimes
them.
you
Okay.
like all the dogs that are at stables. Some of them take like 3 apples. Some of them it takes like 5. But eventually
Why do
they'll
you
just
feed the
stand up
dog
straight.
apples?
Yeah, you give them raw meat.
Because they
not
like apples.
Yeah, I give him meat.
No, don't give the dogs apples. Give them meat.
The meat is more valuable, and I am selfish.
I need it for cooking,
So-
okay?
I don't know if it's just me, but like I've got more than enough for the dogs, and you cooking it.
Well,
There's just
I mean,
there's
either
just such
way,
a heavy
it's
supply
like-
of it.
so
If
the
you use,
reason
like,
after I started
Goblin
using
amiibo,
amiibos,
you
I
get
have
like
so much
12.
of everything.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you get so much from amiibo.
I think the reason
also,
that we
At one
can't.
point, I have 500 things of raw meat.
I
was
once
just like-
capped out my apples at 9.99.
Why would you get so many apples?
Oh my gosh, that sounds
Because
like
I'd
me.
see
Except I
some
eat
and
them
I'd
all.
pick the apples. I know I'd like every time I see an apple tree, I'm like, okay, gotta get them
I
apples.
hate it, right?
So I'd just get all of them,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't just like
You just
eat
make all the
20
apple
apples
stew
at
in
a
the
time
world.
because I cooked the food, right? So I would just have just too many apples. So I just start feeding them to Epona all the time. Every time I see
Yeah.
Epona, before I get on Epona, I feed her an apple, and every time I get off, I feed her an apple.
What do you think would
I'm
happen if
like
you
Daniel.
dropped all of those apples like onto
But-
the ground?
It's funny because if you feed your horse like an Endura carrot instead of
Yeah.
an apple, they'll gain an extra spur, so it'll increase their endurance
Yeah.
as well. And if you give them, I think, a swift carrot, they'll actually go fast. It's
Yep.
interesting that those status bonuses like carry over to the
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
horses
The
too.
horse, yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was thinking, and I heard Connor trying to say something a second ago, but I
Yeah,
want
but
to say
just talk over everybody. So
the
No,
reason
sorry.
we can't pet or pick up or interact with animals, it's all our fault. Because anyone who played Skyward Sword tried throwing that little gremlin off of Skyloft.
But that's because
thinking
you're
back,
a little
Super Mario
gremlin.
64, we all threw the penguin off the cliffs.
Yeah.
Off the
Yeah.
cliffs. We
Yeah.
all did it.
So Nintendo was like, if we let them interact with the dog, they'll be like that video where they carry
Trying to feed
the
it to the bear.
yeah, like they'll pick up a dog or something and go and
Well,
like,
yeah, that's
throw
what I was
it.
saying before with like animal abuse stuff. They didn't want to like have someone throw the dog into a fire.
Yeah, the
But I
like
feel like it'd be
rated
so
E.
easy
the video
to have
where
it, like,
someone takes the cuckoo to the volcano.
I love that
or
video.
what I did, I just threw it in a lake and it disappeared. But I feel like even for
Yeah.
a dog, it would be so easy. Like, you know, you get close to someone and the A button switches to say, oh, talk to this person. You could do that with a dog. So the A button switches from whatever it is to pet.
Yeah, it just gives you the prompt and you can just pet it. You don't have to pick it up if you pet the dog.
Like how you comfort your
That's
horse.
all I want. Yeah, yeah. And Link goes,
Oh.
oh, oh. When he makes that weird sound.
My mom repeats that sound whenever she's
oh,
riding Epona.
Wait,
Oh.
isn't that the sound that Link makes when he pets her?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
he pets his
Yeah.
horse.
Yeah.
that's the first
He can do that when he pets the dog too. Oh, 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 oh. For no reason.
It's slowly turning into Mickey Mouse. It's
Oh, 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 boy. Oh, hey there,
Now we need to do Mickey Mouse video.
Oh,
Welcome
no.
to Breath of the Wild.
Oh, boy.
Ilya,
Oh, no.
but also
Connor.
just a quick
Oh,
thing
yeah.
though. I was just thinking about this. It was doing in my brain. What if for the next game, they kind of went with they went full throttle with the convergence theory, but time got distorted to the point where things from older games were appearing into the new one, and then you had to fix the old timelines and get them back into their proper place, and like go through all the old dungeons again, but with like minor changes to it, and just
That'd
like
be
kind of fix time.
So like
My
the Sonic
brain would
generations
hurt.
of Zelda.
Basically, but better.
Yeah, but
It's
good.
like
Done right.
We're
Yeah.
testing your Zelda knowledge. Which goes in which game?
Oh,
Midna, does she
Oh,
go
I'm gonna
Ocarina
win
of
this.
Time or Twilight Princess?
I would get confused on like
Easy.
the Oracle games.
that's the okay. That would be a tricky
Oh,
one.
Yes, are
just
you
'cause
going
they're,
by?
they're so
Well, the thing is,
close.
it would also be
Yeah,
like
on
you'd be able
Historian.
to you'd be able to also like go through the different dungeons from each game, but like with small minor changes to them.
Yeah, but I feel it would be really neat if they kind of carry over the art style from those games. Sort of like in
Yeah.
Hyrule Warriors, you kind of see that where like the art style just changes
Yeah.
depending on which area you're in.
Yeah.
To
You go
reflect
into
that.
Zelda 64 dungeon, and you just turn into a 64 model.
Oh my! Well, hey, they could do it in Mario Odyssey. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
Actually, I was watching a video on it, and the Mario Odyssey, like the costume they have for Mario, it's actually like way higher polygon count than the original. Like it's actually quite different.
Yeah, they just kind of made it in that style, but it's not. They didn't use the exact model, and so it is.
They have like 20 polygons in the original model, and then like 200 something in the Mario Odyssey one.
Though you know what's funny is that a different piece of trivia is that the character model for Mario in Mario 64 has more polygons in that just his character model than every stage in the original Super Smash Bros. On N64 combined.
Oh yeah, it's
Just
crazy.
because they're all so like simple stages. They're all like
Yeah.
platforms with like 3
I
other
think
platforms.
it was basically a tech demo game
Mind blown.
before
Yeah.
it like became like a full-on thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny bit of trivia for you.
Yeah.
All right, I think that brings us to the very end of the Zelda mailbag and the Hylian Gamescast. So thank you, Ilya. Thank you, Sexy Mac.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Stealth, who is no longer with us. May you rest in peace.
Oh, he's here.
Type in the
but-
chat. Press up
He's
to hear
here, but
stats.
we can't see or hear him.
Oh, yeah.
Because
He's just
so
watching over
stealthy.
us like a ghost. Whoa!
Thank you, Kayla. And thank you, Daniel. Really quick for everybody watching. We still have 30 people watching. Ilya, where can people find you if they would like?
You can find videos that I make, silly videos, nerdy videos. Just look up Ilya Rose, 2 separate words on YouTube. I make videos, and I have a new video coming out this Wednesday. Yay! They come out every second Wednesday, every other Wednesday. I'm on the Instagram as Ilya Rose _ Geek Apprentice. I almost forgot what I was. And then Twitter at Rose _ Ilya.
I like
is
that
me.
every time you promote the YouTube, you like go into this odd accent that I can't quite describe. But it's really cool.
It's actually part of my warm up for getting into a child voice that I had to do for a show.
Oh,
that
nice.
voice, actually.
All right.
Nice.
RPG in the chat just posted all of our Mac. No, that's
What?
Wrong Mac? No, that's not.
No.
That's dumb.
Sorry,
We call
That's
him
not him.
Sexy Mac because
That's
he's not
not him.
actually Mac.
no, that's McIntyre's no longer in the Zelda community. That's
Yeah,
that's
that's
the joke.
that ain't me, boy.
Where he's passed sort of the mantle of McIntyre on to
I don't know if Connor
Jack.
actually. Connor, do you even have a Twitter?
I do
Anyways,
actually.
this is a good segue.
It's in just about any video that I've been in with Jesse. So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's in
Promote
all
yourself.
3, or no wait, all 4 of the videos that I've been in. So
Yeah, and also
you can
if
find it there.
anyone has their own videos that they do, Ilya and Connor can also do audio for other people's videos and scripts as
can.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they won't.
If you need silly
They
voices,
have.
you can ask us too.
Like I do know some
You can
YouTube
you can
channels.
ask politely, and we may do it.
I do know some YouTube
They
channels
won't.
that are similar to mine that like have co-hosts or people that like help write scripts and stuff, and they get like super strict where like no, they're not allowed to write for this channel if they write for me, and I'm like, oh, I don't own Sexy Mac, so
Yeah.
like
aw.
I can't really stop him if he wants to. Like someone tried doing that with Larulian Historian who like writes for everyone, and I'm like, well, even if I told him not to write for me, he's still writing for like 50 other YouTube channels. But anyways, Daniel, where can people find you?
You can.
Kayla, where
Cool.
can people find you? No. All right, Daniel, where?
Okay. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at CaptBurgerson, CaptBurgerson. You can also check out my website, www.burgersonmedia.com, or if it helps you remember, Burgers on Media. Yeah, just imagine like a CD, and then you use that as you just put a burger on top of it. There you go. That's media with a burger. There's a burger on media.
I had a burger a couple days ago.
You can also find me right here on this channel doing this podcast every single week. And I keep forgetting to promote. I have a YouTube channel called NSHG Films. It's kind of a shared channel
You had a
between
video
me and
go up
like
not
3
long
other
ago.
people. Did I?
I think.
I don't think it was mine because it is a shared channel between me and 3 people.
Okay.
But I think one of them put a video up. But there's a playlist on there, and it's like all my videos. It's in just that one playlist. So you should go check that out if you like to hear my voice, or if you like to see really dumb gameplay videos that mostly are just of people like failing at video games. So. Because I make other people game on that channel sometimes. So, that's me.
Kayla.
You can find me as Chubalima on Twitter and Instagram and RuneScape. I am moving into my new place next weekend, so I will actually start using my Twitch account. So I will post that again next week because that'll be more relevant.
You can
And
do
yes.
RuneScape streams and get people to play with you.
Embarrassing.
RuneScape.
All right.
Okay.
I think that's
But
everybody.
also you can find all of us on the Game Over Jesse Discord channel. Oh boy!
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
We are all
Frankly-
on the Discord. That's
Frankly, the best way to get a hold of me if you actually want to speak to me for some reason is just to tag me, mention me in Discord or something, because
Yeah, same.
yeah, that's actually the best way probably to reach any of us. So
yeah.
yes,
See, I don't look at Twitter much, but I do look at Discord.
exactly.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. Once again, Stealth. I don't know if you're in the chat, but thank you for joining earlier for the first half. Ilya, Connor, thank you guys for joining for the second half.
No problem.
Kayla,
Thanks for having
Daniel,
me.
I'm sorry for wasting 3 hours of your day today.
My pleasure.
It's
Yeah.
okay. I'm going to cafe later. Life is good.
All right.
Yeah.
It's okay. We had a good
Jesse,
time.
thank you for hosting us
Yes, thank you for being
every
a wonderful
week.
Das
host.
ist sehr gut.
Yeah.
bringing all these fine people together.
Yeah.
It's been a good
That,
time.
that was the cool thing about E3s. Everybody was like, "We're all here because of you," and I'm like, "No, well, actually."
But,
Actually,
yeah.
I will see.
I felt
Maybe.
for a week I felt important, especially in the video for the people watching. Holly Wolf, you can search it on YouTube. She posted a vlog of E3 where you can go to it, and at like 4 minutes and 20 seconds or 30 seconds, you can see all of us at E3. We're all like wearing the Game Over Jesse shirt, and like you can see our chesticles are real nice. It's
our matching shirts.
yeah, like for half of the conversation, the camera's just on all of our chests, and I'm like, I know this wasn't on purpose, but I kind of feel like it was because she was like, she's busy talking to us, so she's not holding the camera up, and I'm like, it's just staying on our chests way too long.
They got all of my face action, so.
Oh, nice.
It's because you're short.
No.
Oh,
It's okay, me too.
Imagine
Jesse's
if I
just
was
tall.
there.
Really, just Jesse and Rick are really tall.
Yeah.
I'm
Alright.
also on the
Like I
tall
said,
side,
I'm only
but
5'3".
that's something you'll never know.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye-bye.